Hi, everyone. I know people are still trickling in, a little bit of tricky weather tonight, so thanks for making it out here tonight. Today is November 10th, Planning Board meeting. We do have a lot on the agenda tonight, and as you can see, it's a lot of attendance as well. Okay. So what I will ask is, as many of you may or may not know, there is an allotted time for you to come up and speak, and I'll reiterate that when we do get to public comment. But I just want to be able to get through the items that we have tonight. We have 2 urban renewal area proposals, as well as Oak Brook development. So a lot of material to cover. So I appreciate your time being here and then just helping us get through the process tonight. Thanks. Okay. So, Ann?
Board Member Bolt. Chair Duzanne. Board Member Elrod.
Present.
Board Member Graham.
Here.
Board Member Moore.
Here.
Board Member Rudnicki.
Present.
Board Member Samuelson.
Here.
Board Member Miles.
Here.
Board Member Schrader. We have a quorum.
6. We're going to have 5.
Okay.
Board Member Bolt is present.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and start. On the agenda tonight, we're going to start with the minutes from the October 27th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Take it to vote. Take it to vote. Okay. Great. Okay. Next, we'll go. Anybody wish to speak on matters not regarding what's on the agenda tonight?
Good evening, Planning Board. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle in Littleton. I want to make a point here that's general in nature. It has to do with urban renewal, but it's not specific to either of the 2 topics for tonight. So I hope this will be okay. Doug, I need the overhead, please. Yeah, some of the folks on the city council have said there will be no development in Littleton without urban renewal. I'm here to say otherwise. The following charts will show that that is spurious. That's one of their words. It means not so. Monster development going on in Littleton right now. Littleton Village, 7,700 acres. 77 acres, 250,000 square feet of retail. Had nothing to do with urban renewal or tax increment financing. Totally free enterprise. And it's in construction right now. Breckenridge Brewery, another big development going on right now. Free enterprise. No urban renewal. King Soopers Grocery. Not only has the grocery store been torn down and being rebuilt, but the entire shopping center is being rebuilt.
Paul, sorry, just before you continue, just remember King Soopers is part of the urban renewal area we are considering tonight. So if you have others in the area, if you could just not represent them, please.
Okay. I'm just trying to show things that are currently in development. Big dealership, Audi dealership at McDonald's on Broadway. Just got finished. Littleton Commons East, currently in works. Let's see, what is it? 380 apartments and a bunch of retail. Another car dealership, Mazda dealership on South Broadway. It's not in the urban renewal area. The Meadows at Platte Canyon, 250 apartments and I think 3 acres of retail. What I'm trying to say is private enterprise is doing just fine in Littleton without the complication of urban renewal, smoke and mirrors, tax increment financing. Arapahoe County agrees with me, and that's going to come up tonight. So we would ask you to table this whole thing for further study or just vote no on it and get it over with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up? Carol? Or John?
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. John Watson, 4500 West Hinsdale Avenue, 80128. I just wanted to talk generally about the status of the urban renewal plans and to suggest that they're not adequate for purposes of making any decision by the Planning Commission or City Council. And the reason for that is, and these are not related to the plans before you tonight, because of the Board of County Commissioners suggesting the same things that we've talked about, and that's that the plan is not a plan. The underlining is mine. This is the letter from the Board of County Commissioners regarding other plans that have appeared, and the rationale is the same. Insofar as the underlining is mine, I'll try to suggest that we want to read why they're objecting to the plan for several reasons. And that's because the type of developments that they're suggesting are only described generally, and by saying they're described generally, I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. A plan that doesn't describe any development is not a plan at all. We have no idea of location, the developer, the development, the financing, the budget, the off-site improvements, and because of that, there's no plan to approve or disapprove. The Board of County Commissioners has suggested as much. That's just the first of their several concerns. The next is the method of financing, and that's the TIF financing that may or may not be proposed. They're talking about having a plan that involves TIF financing. Well, to do that, we're going to be taking from other taxing authorities, to include the Board of County Commissioners, schools, too many to mention at this point in time. But if we use that kind of financing technique, we need to know what the costs are going to be to the other taxing entities. How can you make a decision on what the financing costs will be if you have no idea the scope and scale of the development, who's going to do it, where it's going to be, how it's going to be situated, how it's going to be financed? And that's the suggestion of the Board of County Commissioners in general as to other plans. Their objections continue. It's necessary to have a description of a plan in order to be able to approve or disapprove of it. We can't say we're going to have a resolution and have a plan. I'll give you the letters when I'm done. When we don't know what or where it is. The county commissioners have suggested that in order to make an assessment that there's not going to be any impact to the county, we need to know what it is. We can't just say there's no impact when you don't even know what the plan is and you don't have a developer or a concept yet. You don't know what the financing, you don't know what the off-sites are. We have no idea what the traffic consequences will be, the streets, roads, gutters, lighting, curbs, improvements. Without having any concept of what those issues will be, you can't approve a plan because there's no plan to approve. Now, the suggestion is we need to make developer incentives. Paul's already described that there's development taking place already in the city of Littleton. And if we're going to be subsidizing as taxpayers or condemning as a city authority, we need to know what plan we're going to be doing and dealing with. And finally, on this one issue, the Board of County Commissioners has suggested that there's no evidence whatsoever at this point in time, this is not my language, that the Board of County Commissioners, that these properties that are blighted are a menace to public health, safety, morals, or welfare. And I stand by that suggestion. Merely blighting properties and saying that they're going to do an urban renewal on these properties does not meet the entire test of what an urban renewal plan requires. You've got to show that it's going to affect the public health, safety, morals, or welfare. I'm going to give you another letter from the Board of County Commissioners, which is even longer and more extensive because of the limited time that I have. as well as Resolution 88 from the city. Because the city has said that they're going to make sure that all the parties are going to be at the table to decide what these issues are. They weren't there. They haven't been there, and there's no plan to have them there, and they're not happy. The letters are coming to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Pam?
Yeah, the projector is there. I'm looking, yeah. So I'll follow up on that.
Please state your...
Referring to the cases
Yeah.
coming up, why are we listening to this?
My name is Pam Chadbourne, and I live in District 1. And this is not about the two urban renewal plans that are here tonight. This is about Arapahoe County reacting to the first two urban renewal plans that you folks voted that were compliant with the comprehensive plan. And Arapahoe County sent letters to Littleton on October 28th. City Council on November 4th passed Resolution 88 concerning participation and support of impacted taxing entities in urban renewal projects. And the lawyer at the meeting said, that resolution deals with projects, not plans, and therefore we can disregard Arapahoe County's concerns. I'm going to state, if City Council was sincere about the intent and purpose behind Resolution 88, they would have voted to postpone to a date certain to hold discussions with Arapahoe County to see if their concerns could be addressed. There is no publicly identified need for speed in approving these plans. The City Council could have done that easily. And if I believe their intent to comply with that resolution, that's what they would have done. But they didn't. And they passed the first two UR plans. So I'm going to say that that vote calls into doubt Council's commitment to both resolutions meant to address the urban renewal concerns. 88 concerning the impacted taxing entities, and also the one that they said we're not going to use eminent domain for urban renewal projects. I don't believe them. So I did the second thing first. Let me also present a vision for Littleton. So I've got two parts of this. One is design and style, and the other one is technology and business generation. And it gives Littleton the best of both worlds, historic and traditional styles on the north side of the city and a modern lifestyle on the south side. Few Denver metro satellite cities can do this, thanks in part to their overuse of urban renewal, for example, Arvada. And that kind of goes to the comprehensive plan, a distinctive Littleton. Now in South Littleton, we've got the Mineral Corridor. It has already modern current design styles in high-density areas set by Littleton Village, Littleton Commons, Meadows of Platte Valley, etc. But North Littleton, the Littleton Boulevard and Main Street corridor, we can have, and we do have some, historic preservation of early Littleton to mid-century modern. That's the 1800s to the 1960s.
Pam, Ms. Chadbourne, I'm going to interrupt you because this area you're talking about is one of the plans that we're going to be discussing this evening.
That has nothing to do with my vision.
You're going to have an opportunity to address this later when we're under those specific areas.
If you can, Pam, I'm fine with you addressing those areas that are not going to be discussed this evening. If there are other areas.
I'm not going to talk about South Littleton, the modern stuff. I'm going to talk about the historic part of Littleton and why I think that's cool. The other part of my vision is technology and business generation. And there are keywords: independence, local strength, and character and identity. Two parts: energy efficiency, which is promotion of home and commercial building retrofits, and also business incubators to retrofit existing buildings for energy efficiency, and also local broadband and internet access. And both of these give us partnerships with innovative, creative, forward-looking investors, developers, and builders.
Pam, I need you to wrap it up, please.
So let me just say at the bottom here, Warren Buffett says that investors who join the trend in progress can't beat the market. And this is fear of missing out or keeping up with the Joneses doesn't work. And a vision for Littleton that kind of plays on our two assets, the historic part on the north part of the city, and a sense of community and identity would give us a shared long-term mission.
Thank you.
And I guess I totally disagree. I think my vision is not about your plans.
Any others?
I'm Carol Brezak, and I live in the 4th District. I'm representing a group of 5 sponsors of a petition that we turned in to the city. So I'm just here to inform the Planning Board that the petitions have been turned in. We gathered over 5,500 signatures. We have personally verified about 3,900. So we have every expectation that our question will go before the voters. The question is, any council action approving or modifying an urban renewal plan pursuant to Part 1 of the Colorado Urban Renewal Law must be ratified by the registered electors of the City of Littleton if the approval or the modification of the urban renewal plan proposes the use of or change to eminent domain, condemnation, tax increment financing, revenue sharing, or cost sharing. The group of us that put this question forward did not do this just on a whim. We've been going to meetings and we've educated ourselves over the course of the last year on urban renewal and tax increment financing, how eminent domain works in the state. We first started out thinking we would abolish the urban renewal for Littleton, but we've decided that that's not what we wanted to do, that we actually thought that there was a purpose for urban renewal, and we wanted to have it available to us if we needed it in Littleton. But we did not like the fact that 7 unelected board people who didn't even have to be citizens of Littleton could make determinations about the development of land in our city and how to use public tax dollars for private development. We didn't like the fact that the urban renewal law allows the authority the right to determine land uses and densities without going through the planning board and the city council. We know that the plans that you've considered have kind of eliminated that and are going to put the plans through you, which we think is good. Don't know that it will last through the 25, 40 years the urban renewal authorities last. We didn't like the fact that the eminent domain could be used in the name of economic development, and we did not like the fact that so much tax money could be diverted away from the city, the county, schools, and the park district. The list of concerns go on, but there certainly isn't enough time to go through them all in 4 minutes. The council has taken some steps since we started our process. They passed a resolution that they wouldn't use eminent domain, and we applaud that. But we want to have that protection beyond the council that's currently sitting, which is what this charter change will do. We've also heard the council say they're willing to negotiate with the taxing entities, and they actually said until they got approval and full support of all the taxing entities, they would not move forward on an urban renewal plan. But Arapahoe County has objected, and they still have moved forward on the 2 plans that you've approved previously. We believe that TIF can be something that can be used, but rather than it being a source of revenue, it should be a source to service debt. And we don't believe that's the approach that's being taken. So I wanted to let you know that the petitions have been delivered. We suggest that the citizens that sign these petitions, almost 4,000, are actually somewhat of a survey, and they're telling you that they want the right to vote on eminent domain. They want the right to vote on any urban renewal project that will divert tax dollars away from the intended taxing entities. And we want the right to vote on the use of any of our tax dollars being used in a revenue or cost-sharing scheme with the developer. I see that this is a way for the citizens to get the same authority to voice our opinion on urban renewal that the council has given all of the taxing entities except the citizens of Littleton. So we see this as just another person or another group at the table being able to say yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I actually, in looking at the agenda, I want to propose a change in order to the agenda if we could? We can't.
You certainly can, but I think everybody is here for the first two items. It's certainly up to the board, though.
I want to take advantage of having the full board here. I know that one of our board members will have to recluse himself from the urban renewal, so I'd like to start with Oak Brook so that we can have his representation here. So if we could, is everyone okay with that on the board? Start with Oak Brook? Okay.
We have to round up some staff, but we'll be...
Sorry about that. Is the Oak Brook group ready, available? Okay, just some technicalities. So just bear with us for the change. Five minutes, or is it going to take a...
You could give us a few minutes. I would appreciate that.
Okay, all right.
So how about that weather we're having?
Thank you, Andrea.
We'll be here till 10. Yeah, we can't go past 10.
Yeah, I did. It was in that attachment.
Yeah, and then I didn't see. Well, I guess I can see that.
Give
Good evening, Planning Board. I'm Andrea Mimnov, the planning staff. This application before you is to amend the Safeway Oak Brook Planned Development Plan to allow for an assisted living facility to be developed on the remaining vacant lot within the shopping center. The Safeway Oak Brook Planned Development Plan is located at the northwest corner of County Line Road and East Phillips Avenue. The primary entrance to the site is off of County Line Road, with a secondary entrance off of East Phillips Avenue. This is an aerial photograph of the site, and you can also see the access road at the back of the property that serves the rear of the businesses for primarily for truck activities. The anchor store, the inline stores, and the 4 pad sites up along County Line Road were developed in the mid-1980s. Later, the parking lot that you see to the north of the vacant lot was installed. It is for employees of Courtesy Ford, and that leaves the one remaining vacant lot that you see there, which is 3 acres, which is the subject of this application. The applicant's proposal is to develop a 4-story assisted living facility on the parcel. There is a drive lane around the parcel, as you can see there, and the building is nestled right in there on an angle. The main entrance to the site is on the front of the building facing the parking field, and the access to the overall site utilizes the existing accesses on County Line and East Phillips. Parking has been reconfigured and expanded to serve the site. So this slide shows a bit of the topography of the site. It's a little difficult at this scale, but you can see the contour lines, and particularly at the north portion of the site as it wraps around the corner, the inside of the corner there, where the contour lines get very close together, you can see that the property slopes up. And so the lot is fairly flat at the southern end, and then as you move to that north corner, all of a sudden there's a steep slope. The difference on the building between the lowest point and the highest point is 13 feet. And so the building would be pressed into the slope by about a little over 10 feet. And then, in addition, there is a retaining wall to make up the remainder of the site. So the proposed building height is 41 feet and 1 inch. And I'm going to take a break for a minute from this presentation to go over a little bit how building height is calculated according to our zoning code. Okay, so there are 2 scenarios for calculating building height, and one is for a flat site or a site that has a slope of 10 feet or less across the course of the building. And that's shown on the example here to the left. In this example, the rectangle here is the building, and what you see here is the slope. The shaded area is the portion of the building that would be pressed into the ground. And in this example, the slope is 4 foot higher at the high end than at the opposite end, which is at 0. The way we measure height in this situation is to take the lowest point, measure out 5 feet, and that set up a datum point right there. And from that point, you go from this datum point to the top of the building. In this example, I've shown this as 36 feet in height. The other example is where we have a situation where the slope is greater than 10 feet. In this example, I've shown the slope to be 12 feet difference than where we started on the opposite end. Again, this shaded area is the portion of the building that would be underground. In this case, rather than establishing the datum point 5 feet out from the site, we go 10 feet up. Okay? There's that 10 feet up. We establish a datum point and then measure from this point to the top of the building. So in this case, the height of the building would be 26 feet. Okay? So this one is 36. This one is 26. And as viewed from the other side, as you can see, it would be a different percentage that would be visible, which is the reason for the difference in how we measure it. Okay? New landscaping with the center is located within landscape islands within the site and also around the perimeter of the building. And there is also a buffer area between the building. We can't see it on this slide particularly. There's a buffer area that's established between the building and the residences across East Phillips Avenue. That's on the north side of this particular site. And those lots happen to belong to other property owners due to the unique configuration, diamond shape of this lot. And the developer has obtained permission from them to add to the already existing trees to enhance that buffer area. In terms of architecture, the facility has 360-degree design. There will be windows on all elevations and a variety of building materials. There was a traffic study prepared for the application, and it indicates that trip generation for the proposed assisted living facility would be an overall 81.5% fewer trips than that would be generated if a commercial building were developed on the same site. So the request for the amendment requires 3 actual amendments to the zoning. And the first is to allow assisted living facility as a permitted use. The second is to increase the maximum allowable building height. The allowable maximum building height is 36 feet on the existing PDP. And the proposed height of the 4-story building, using the measurement with the slope that is greater than 10%, is approximately 41 feet. And it comes to a 5-foot 1-inch height increase. So that's the second amendment, a height increase of 5 foot 1 inch. The third amendment would be to increase the maximum allowable square footage. The plan allows 55,800 square feet, and the applicant proposes 98,650. The criteria for evaluating an amendment to a planned development plan is that the project meet the intent of the planned development district and also be consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan. I've included here a couple of the more pertinent policies of the comp plan. All of them are listed in your staff report. The first one is policy 1.6, encourage housing that responds to changing demands in the local housing market, allows every generation and income group to call Littleton home and otherwise follow the plan. The percentage of residents aged 65 and older in Littleton is 16%, or approximately 6,800 residents. And the number of seniors is expected to increase over the next 20 years. So the proposed living facility would provide a housing option for those seniors who may need their services that the facility can provide. Policy 1.8 requires that new commercial development be appropriately buffered from adjacent uses. So the visible portion of the proposed facility from East Phillips Avenue will be approximately 32 feet in height and also 290 feet in width. The buffer area, as I talked about a little earlier, is 80 feet in width between the building and the west side of the East Phillips Avenue right-of-way. The proposal includes the addition of trees to provide a buffer from the existing residential uses across East Phillips Avenue. In addition, the building will have 360-degree architecture, which should provide for better aesthetics than a blank wall, which would be common with a retail building. And finally, with the comp plan, it promotes the general welfare of the community. The proposed amendment will promote the general welfare of the community by developing a vacant property in a shopping center, which may assist in revitalizing the center, as there would be a new customer base from the residents of the assisted living facility, employees who work there, and visitors who come to the facility. And it would provide a new high-quality housing option for seniors that meets their daily needs. So in conclusion, the proposed development is consistent with the comp plan and the planned development district intent by utilizing a vacant property of over 30 years for assisted living facility to serve the housing needs of a large and increasing number of seniors in the community. The shopping center will benefit from the additional customer base, while the residents will benefit from the businesses within a short walking distance from their homes. And also, the proposed use will generate less vehicle trips than the approved commercial and office uses. Staff recommends that the Planning Board recommend approval of this application to City Council. And within your packet, there is a Planning Board resolution prepared. It's number 20-2014, and it reflects the staff's recommendation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for staff? Otherwise, we'll continue with, is there a presentation from the developer? Okay.
Let's see, on page 4 of the staff report, you call out this assisted living facility has a commercial component. And on page 3 of the staff report, you talk about the existing PD having a 30-foot height limit for commercial use. Yet you are using a 36 height limit, which in the original PD was for an office use. You make 2 references to commercial, but then you switch and use the 36 height limit,
Yes.
which makes the 41 feet 1 inch seem less intrusive than if it were based on the 30 foot.
Yes.
What's your criteria for using the 36 rather than the 30?
The way staff looked at it was that there could, in fact, be a 36-foot office building on that site. So we took the maximum allowable height on that property and compared it to what was being proposed. And that's how we came up with the increase of 5 foot 1 inch.
Regardless of what you say about this being a commercial application. Seems to me to be a little selective, but that's just an editorial comment. Second comment, we normally see the traffic report, not that I want to look at 82 pages of write in and write out at 3 a.m. in the morning, but how come we didn't get that this time?
I wasn't aware that it was typical with these applications, so I apologize for that. We could certainly get that for you.
Not going to read it tonight, but it's something to include.
Sure.
In regards to that traffic study, was the traffic study done based on the potential commercial space, the potential office building space, or?
Yes, it was based on a potential commercial space being located on that site and compared it with the assisted living facility.
Who prepared the report, the traffic report?
LCS.
Typically, commercial properties are assessed and taxed at I believe, a 29% ratio, but oftentimes assisted living is regarded as residential and therefore taxed at residential rates. Is this proposed development going to be taxed as commercial or residential?
I assume it's whatever the assessor feels is appropriate. I think when we talk about commercial, I guess in my mind, I think office or retail, I guess just to get back to Commissioner Rudnicki's point. So perhaps we should say retail versus office. Maybe that would make it clear. But as far as we know, I think the assessor will probably assess it as a residential property.
Any more questions for staff, or we'll go on with the developer?
I just have a couple of quick questions. On the open space, originally was required to have 23.8% open space, and we're reducing the footprint by quite a bit, but not changing, and changing the use from commercial to residential, essentially. But there's no change in the open space. Is that open space that was required before typical of commercial, and what would generally be the open space requirement for residential as opposed to
Yes.
or multifamily?
So for commercial, well, previously on the approved PD plan, there was a minimum requirement of the 23%. And with this new application, right now we are looking at the zoning document, not an actual site development plan. And so what the applicant chose to do was to keep that same minimum at the 23%. Now, when we get to the site development plan, I suspect there will be a little bit more open space that is provided. The applicant may be able to give you a better number on that. If, in fact, it is because it will be a residential use in a PD plan, it depends on the density. And I believe for multifamily, 20. Get a little help on this one here.
Well, it's not a multifamily use in the fact that it's like apartments. It's actually a residential, another type of residential use. But our code requires a minimum of 20% open space for at least for planned development commercial zoning. If something is zoned PDR, planned development residential, then there's a minimum requirement of 25%. This property is currently PDC. They're amending the plan to add a residential use mix in with the commercial. The code does allow, while the code doesn't allow a commercial use to be added to a planned development residential, it does allow residential uses in a planned development commercial because it allows a mix of uses in that way. And this applicant chose not to ask for an amendment to the existing standard on this particular PDC, which is actually 23% exceeding the code requirement. So, I mean, that's what they chose to request, is to leave that the same. So.
Okay, and then just one more quick question while you're standing there. The parking requirements, the amendment is per city code. What's the city code?
They're what is it? Per city codes. Are they? Oh, for senior facility? Yes, they're per city code for senior facilities.
I'm sorry.
They're per city code for senior facilities.
What is that?
What is it? It's less than one per unit.
Less than one per unit.
I think it's less than one per unit.
Okay.
Could you speak up?
It's less than one per unit because these residents typically do not drive.
Less than one
less
per
than
unit?
one per unit.
What does that mean? Is it a half a?
One space per unit. Less than one space per unit. I'm sorry.
I think I read in here it's actually, or somewhere in here, they said something about half a car per unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, stay there. Now I'm confused. Is it one space per unit or half a space per unit?
It says less than one space per unit. Yes.
Okay. Then my question was, how many spaces are being provided here? 0.5? I think that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw in here somewhere, but I just wanted to confirm that. I think that was one of the neighborhood issues.
It barely passed math. Was this screwy? Jesus.
So the parking lot per the code is 1/2 of a space, 0.5 for a buffet unit, 2/3 of a space for a one-bedroom unit. And I believe the developer can provide more information on the number of buffets or studios versus one-bedrooms that he's planning within the facility.
Okay. Oh, I guess I forgot one question. You talked about the height, how height is calculated.
Yeah.
How does that relate on this site again? So you mentioned, is there a slope that's greater than 10 feet?
Yes, on this site, there is a slope that is greater than 10 feet. In fact, from the low point to the high point is just a little over 13 feet.
Okay.
So in this situation, we set the datum point 10 feet above the lowest point on the building.
Okay.
And we measure from there.
Where is the lowest point, do you know?
Yeah, it's towards the front of the building. Now, the applicant's architect is here and also has plans to talk more about specifically how the height was measured for the exact building.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thanks.
Andrew, I have one other question. On the plan, there's a detention pond in the parking lot area. Is that there now? Is there a detention pond underground now?
It's not there now. Not there. It's a water quality, right? A water quality pond.
So it's
not there
to
now.
be built
Not there
in
now.
the parking
to be
lot?
Built. Yes.
And there's a landscaping plan around it?
Sorry?
We may let the developer talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. No more questions.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is George Swintz, and I'm the owner's representative, the owner of this project.
A little closer, if you would.
Sorry, is that better?
Better.
Sure. The owner of this project is the Oak Brook Assisted Living LLC. With me tonight are not any of the owners. They are out of town and weren't able to get in tonight. However, I do have with me Steve Elkin, who is going to be the operator of the project, and Kevin Karras with Lee Architects. I'm going to make the presentation. They're available to answer any questions that you might have. I have got a lot of slides here, so I want to give you the pace of what we're going to do so that I can keep you on track with what we're going to cover here. So you can see there are 5 items. I'm going to describe the project a little bit more than staff has. We recognize from the neighborhood perspective that height is an issue, so we want to hit that head on and talk about what we've tried to do to mitigate the height of our building. We want to visit the economic impacts of our project and then talk about where other communities are doing these types of projects. And we will answer some of the questions that you've raised. I think I've kept pretty good notes. When we get to the question and answer section, then I will attempt to answer those for you. This is the project. It's 128 units. Kevin is calculating, the architect is calculating the number of unit mix, but they're largely one-bedroom units. 4-story building on 3.3 acres, and there are 96 parking spaces. We always build about a half a space per unit because there aren't very many people that have a car, and if they have a car, we find they have it there for a few months and then they never drive it, and eventually the family will take it away from them. We're actually providing 0.75 spaces, so we're providing many more than is actually required. It's important to note, I think, as you think about the height of this building, that we have 30% of our units on the upper floor because the first floor is where we've got all the common spaces. We've got a dining room, we've got a commercial kitchen, we've got a nice lobby, we've got meeting rooms, television rooms, a salon, a library, TV rooms, and so forth. So what we do is we typically put our common areas on the first floor, and then the units are up above. This is the project, the building in yellow. You'll hear me refer to it as an H. It's filling out the undeveloped part of the site. And what's important, I think, to note here is that the houses that are in green are to the east of the building. And we're going to show a slide later that talks about how many of them we actually feel are impacted. There are 3 access points into the center. You can see them there on County Line Road, which is running east-west at the south part of the site. Here is the blow-up of the site, and you see how it's somewhat configured really right up tight along the end of the inline space, and the building is not interfering with the access points and the parking spaces that are already in existence on the property. The access points off of Phillips come right into the corner of our building, so you'll see that represented in a couple of perspective drawings that we're going to show you when we get into the section that's talking about the height of the building. Here's a little bit more of a blow-up. I guess I'll answer the question on the water quality pond, which is the green kind of rectangular area that's in the front of the site. It's been placed there purposely to meet the water quality standards that Littleton has. We moved it away from the building because in conjunction with working with the shopping center, they didn't want us to eliminate parking spaces right in front of their shop space, so we've put it as far away from the building as we can and still get it to drain into the existing system. If you notice at the curb cut on Phillips, you see all the trees that have been planted in this area. At mature height, those trees are going to be anywhere between 35 and 50 feet in height. We have worked with the staff when we made our initial submission. They said, would you please change it so the deciduous trees are on the south side of that curb cut and the evergreen trees on the north side so they're not casting a shadow onto the intersection for safety reasons. I've got a series of slides that I'll kind of click through here if you want to look at the type of product that this group has purchased, or has built before. This is a project in Thornton. 3 slides of it. Sorry, it's a little dark, but snowy, I guess, appropriately for tonight. This is the similar project that's in Loveland. They're in an H shape, as you have seen. We work within the codes that each municipality has relative to the hard surfaces and amounts of stucco and stone that are on the outside of it. Please note that we put typically a pitched roof on the buildings. We prefer to have a pitched roof because the water drains off of it versus a flat roof. And that we've changed here to help with the height issue. Courtyard, which is the inside space inside of the H, provides outside dining. It's right off of the lobby. It's a very nice public space for the seniors that live here. This is a project that's called Springbrook, and the tower that building is actually 8 stories in height. So in some cases, we even go taller than a 4-story building. Again, another slide of Springbrook. I wanted to embellish a little bit the demand for senior housing here. This is a slide on Arapahoe County population, and so you can see by 2020 that there are going to be about 100,000 seniors over 65 years of age. This is going to drill down in the next 2 slides because here is an example of where Littleton stacks in the other communities that are in Denver as far as the quantity of aging population. Really only your community is only really outreached by Wheat Ridge, and you can see the other ones that go down there as well. And then this is the Littleton population. So by 2020, you're going to have approximately 11,000 senior citizens. I wanted to talk a little bit about our project in the area of the continuum of care. So what I've done here is I've ordered these from the intense use, the intense amount of care that you're receiving as a senior from hospice down to independent living. So the hospice is when you're nearing the end of your life. Potentially you've come from a hospital or a nursing home. Some people have issues with their memory, and memory care is a more intense use. Our use is the assisted living use there. And the reason I think it's important for you to understand that is that there are not a lot of emergency vehicles that come in and out of the facility. We figure that there are about 4 of those trips in a given month. While I'm talking about traffic, it's off slide here, but we have a trash truck that comes in once a day, and we have 4 deliveries a week in food service, if you will. So the traffic generated for our use is really a lot less than a retail use would be on this site. Independent living is the last one that I haven't mentioned there, which of course means there's less care given. The type of care that we give is, I don't need to read this to you, you can see that when you get to the end of life and you need help preparing your meals or 5 daily functions, we're doing those things for you. In addition to that, we're monitoring your medication, we're coordinating doctor visits. We don't have a doctor on staff, although the bottom line here says the nurse is not required, but we have always felt that it's important to have a nurse, licensed nurse on staff, so state doesn't require that we do that, but we do that. We bring in physical therapy, we have wellness programs, dietitians, and so forth that are really extending with dignity the length of a senior's life. Now we're into the section that talks about the height of the building, and I've zoomed in the aerial here to a degree to help accentuate the issue that I'm trying to point out relative to the lower right-hand corner of the building. You can see, not in the building, of the site to the east of Phillips Drive, there's a large rectangular box with kind of a white roof. There's a nursery there. The northern property line in an east-west line runs through a part of our building. So there isn't really any residential interference, if you will, with the view corridors that the neighborhood has expressed to us in 2 neighborhood meetings. There are concerns about this. So there isn't a lot of impact to the south of that line, and to the north of that line, you can see that they're really just the 3 houses. The further southern and eastern one is really not even orientated to the west. Remember, County Line Road's going east-west here, so the lines that go across the site are identifying where the building blocks the view of the Front Range. We would submit that you really can't block the Front Range of the Colorado Rockies fully. They're too long. The other thing that's important here to notice, and I guess I'll make this point again later, is that in Littleton's planning, at least thus far, all the commercial activities that are on Broadway, which is slightly out of the picture on the west, and on County Line Road, jump directly into residences here. There isn't really a transition, so it's a commercial site that abuts to a residential site. Oh, let me go back one. I forgot to mention to you the asterisks. So you'll see 3 asterisks on the site. At the far left side, there's an asterisk that's going to be a perspective drawing photo, actually, with our building and superimposed on it from the roof of the furniture store that has replaced the Safeway. There's an asterisk in County Line Road, and there's an asterisk on Phillips Drive looking to the west. So if you look at these perspective drawings, here's the County Line Road perspective. You can see 3 margaritas in the right side of the photo, and our building that's in the middle, and then the shop space that is to the left of it as the photographer has taken this. Gives you a bit of an orientation of how the building sits into the center and how it lines up with the shop space, and its impact, if you will, from passersby on County Line. Remember the slides before that I showed you with the pitched roof? We originally would have preferred to do that instead of a flat roof, just from maintenance standpoint. This is a 4-story building that's superimposed from Phillips Drive. So the photographer is standing right at the curb cut as you're looking into that curb cut off of Phillips Drive, and you can see the height of the building as it relates to what we typically would build. I see lots of people studying it. Do you want to interrupt me with questions or go to the end? That's because it sits down into the hill, and so there's much of the building that is actually not visible from the perspective of the east side of the center. Shall I move on? So here's another perspective of it with the rooftops flat. And what we've done here is we've done several things. We've looked at what we call the interstitial space, which if you look at my gesture here with my hands, there's a finished floor elevation of the floor above and a finished floor of the one below. And the amount of space that's above the ceiling in each one of the units carries air through the building. What we've done here is we've adapted the building so we use a PTAC unit, which is a thermostat-controlled unit that goes in each one of the units, goes in the exterior wall of the unit, and therefore lets us shrink the interstitial space. And then obviously we've taken the pitched roof off the top of it, really for a couple of reasons, to address the height issue, but it's also because we're looking at how the building looks from the shopping center side of the building as well, and integrating with the materials and the architectural design of the shopping center. So here's a perspective that I said from the roof down by the furniture store. You see the yellow building is 3 Margaritas, our building superimposed into the site. And then I want to, this is a lot of information here, but I think what's important for you to understand is that if we do an office building on the site, and the way I look at the height here is to me, it's just simpler to explain it to you that if the office building could be 36 feet tall, and because the code says that when the building sits into the hill, you're adding 10 feet to the 36-foot height building, so you're at a 46-foot building. Our request is for a 51-foot building. So the difference between 51 feet and 46 feet is the 5-foot variance. Hopefully that's maybe a little easier to understand. The vertical lines on the right side of the screen indicate the property lines and the right-of-way of Phillips Drive. You'll notice that we've set back the building 80 feet. I think code is 30 or 35-foot setback. We've set the building back further than that, which we think helps the issues of the height relative to the adjoining neighborhood. The building on the right side is an example of a residential home. The reality is that the height of the peak of the building is about the height of our building. So the office building is shaded inside the assisted living building. So the assisted living building is white there with the office building superimposed on top of it. There's a 6-foot fence in the backyard of the residences. We're suggesting that if you're standing there and you're looking out over it, the trees that are already there and will be added to a degree are taller already than the height of our building. The existing grade is shown there so you can see where the building is nestled into the hill, if you will. The economic impact is apparent, I think. We've got construction jobs. The building's going to cost about $11 million to build. We'll be purchasing materials here. We've got a payroll that's between 40 to 50 employees when the building is 100% occupied. The employees, like I said, are nurses, but you've got an administrator, you've got marketing people, you've got staff support, you've got caregivers, you've got cooks, maintenance staff, plant management staff. So there's a lot of people that are employed here. The payroll of this project is nearly $1.7 million annually. We will have, no doubt, some of those people occupying apartments in Littleton, so there'll be a plus up, if you will, in apartment occupancy. And what we like to say is there's 3 generational purchasing power. That's what I'm trying to represent in 3 words: high population density. There's a lot of people in the building. They have themselves that they purchase for, their parents purchase, or their children purchase things, and their grandchildren purchase things. When everybody's coming to our project, they're going to be buying restaurant meals. Some people will be coming from out of state. They'll be staying in the hotel. They'll be shopping, obviously revitalizing the existing older center that's there, and they'll need medical care. So the medical tenants in the neighborhood are going to enjoy having us as a user there. We'd submit that this is not a retail site. It's been passed over for decades. Our use is not an intense use. It's got low parking requirements. It's got low traffic generation as compared to retail uses or office uses that could go on the site. And so if there was that type of use before you tonight, there'd be a whole different set of concerns relative to traffic congestion, noise, movie theaters getting out late at night, that kind of thing that is permitted within this zone. This project will keep your senior citizens in Littleton. It's going to draw residents from outside of Littleton because we think we offer a really high-quality product because of the size of it, because, therefore, of the staff that we have to take care of the seniors. There's definitely going to be people that will come to visit the seniors that are there, that are be bringing capital into Littleton. So there are a lot of economic reasons to support the project. This is almost the last section of my slides. It's a little bit difficult to see, but what I've done is I've taken the 470 corridor starting in Stonegate and then going westerly along 470 just to show you where other communities are putting these kinds of functions. They put them in commercial locations because we want them to be accessible, we want them to be visible. 50% of our occupancy comes from the adult parent, the adult child of the senior citizen who's going, geez, I need to go check on that. Uncle Fred is about to need some care, and so I'm going to drive in, I'm going to stop and talk to them. You'd be surprised how much of our occupancy comes from that kind of a function. So here at Stonegate, they have located those right at Chambers and 470. The same points already is made all the way through. I won't belabor this, but here's Meridian with E470 and I-25, all in the commercial zone in Meridian. Here's Highlands Ranch, major thoroughfares, major intersections, commercially located properties. The next 4 slides are actually, I asked the City of Littleton. They've provided these slides for us. I didn't make these up. I didn't have to because staff has inventoried the vacant sites in Littleton. They're shown in yellow. What we've done here is we have circled the sites that are in excess of 3 acres that support this type of a project and those that are zoned for it. So the planned development-C, the PDC zone, I didn't have time today because of the weather to verify, but we'll have to look up how many of the PD zones actually give a right by use to do senior housing in them. In this section, and of these 4 slides, they're the only vacant sites in Littleton that are left. You're very, very built out. Consequently, the circled areas are the only part of this part of Littleton. You see it's off of Mineral where you can do assisted living. The next slide is Santa Fe and 470 and Wadsworth, so you can do assisted living in those locations. You could put it at Bowles and Santa Fe. We haven't researched this, but it's along the river there, so we have to make sure they're outside the floodplain. Notice we're skipping over all the other sites. They're not zoned for assisted living. And this is an R5 site, which we would pass over because it isn't very accessible, it isn't very visible for the points I previously made. Those are the vacant sites that accept assisted living. If you look at the demand that we show for senior housing and the limited number of sites and the economic impact that's made, the quality of the project is one that we're thankful staff supports, but we believe is going to be a great long-term business, community citizen here in Littleton. I will answer some of your questions that you previously asked if you'd like me to do that and then take your questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Do you want to answer the questions
Sure,
from earlier?
yes. I'm trying to remember which one to do here first. The tax question, you asked how much the taxes are. Clearly, there's very little tax being generated now. Clearly, there's a lot of value in the cost of our building because we're building a high density of finish, so the amount of dollars spent on the building are going to generate a higher tax than just a rectangular box that could have been here for retail use. You asked about open space. I guess I'd point out that the only part of the site that we're really developing is what was always intended to have a footprint there that was 40,800 square feet. Our footprint is even smaller than that. So there is some open space inside of our H, if you understand the analogy there. But we're really not doing anything more. Maybe we're doing less than what you could do if you put a 41,000 square foot single box there. And Kevin, did you have the answer on the unit mixes yet? There are three types of units. We call them a buffet, but it's effectively a studio. There's 92 of those. There's 30 one-bedrooms, and there are 6 two-bedroom units. The interesting thing about the public process is we've submitted this to the neighborhood multiple times now. Now they've heard this 3 times, and we're not exactly sure what they're going to say. So we'd hope to be able to come back and answer any questions public, addresses here. Do you have further questions for me?
I'll give you the opportunity to do that, to address the public. Any questions from the board, though? No. We'll do that now.
Just if you could address that water.
The water quality pond?
Quality pond. Is that a surface, all the water will come down on the surface of the
Exactly.
parking lot and into that pond? Is it going to be landscaped? Is there going to be grass in there, or is that just a low point in the parking lot?
It is landscaped. It's typically not got a lot of shrubs or anything into it. Its purpose is to screen out and filter out dirt and so forth that's silted there. And it is intended to have a landscape architectural benefit. It's not just rocks, if that's what you're worried about.
And it's not there now?
It is not there now. When the shopping center was developed, Littleton didn't have the requirement back in the 80s for a water quality.
How many parking spaces will that take up?
Great question. As I recall, it's 8 or 10.
7 spaces.
The architect would know 7 spaces.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. The parking is located it's all surface parking within the area, or is there any garage parking?
Let me see if I can go back to a slide here. Oops. So it's apparent that the parking spaces are in the front of the building, between the building and county line, but you'll also notice there's some spaces that are at the very top part of the site. That is where typically we have staff. That's also where the deliveries go. So we haven't brought the deliveries in the front. They're down depressed below the neighborhood, if you will. And there's, looks like there's probably 12 to 14 spaces back there. There are no covered underground parking spaces.
And so for employee parking, so the 0.75 parking spaces are for the 0.75 per unit, I think was the calculation. That's for the residents of the building. So employee parking, how are you addressing employee parking? How many employees do you have on staff what's the maximum employees you have on staff at any point in time?
That's a good question. There are 3 shifts, so there are probably 20 to 25 staff members there during the day. Drops off to maybe 12, 15 in the evening shift, and then there's about 10 people there that are at night. And when we do this, we would encourage you to go visit our projects because there's no cars there from the residents. So if we plan to have a half a parking space per unit, including the need for staff parking, we have enough. So if we have 128 units, that's 64 spaces. We think that's enough for providing 96.
Okay, so it's within that calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the other question I had, I know you made modifications to your design. You typically do the pitched roof. It has a much nicer look, especially as it does, it is near a residential neighborhood, so it fits in much more with the character of the neighborhood with the pitch roof, but you're foregoing that for the reasons of height and other reasons. what is, how much are you giving up in height as a result of going from pitch roof to flat roof?
And the interstitial space, it's probably 4 feet or so. It's not as significant as you might think. It looks like it visually, but there's a bit of a parapet. So there's a flat roof, and there's a parapet around the outside of the building. And we measure, Littleton's code measures to the height of the parapet. One of the things I didn't point out in the section drawing is that you can't see the rooftop units, that there are some for the common area space. They're in the middle of the footprint, so you can't actually see them over the edge of the parapet.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll open it up to any further questions? No, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I leave this up, or do you want me to shut this down?
Leave it up.
May leave it up. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to the public. I have a sign-up sheet here. So I'm going to go through this. If you haven't signed up at the end, just raise your hand and let me know whether or not you wish to speak. You are going to be limited to 4 minutes. I do believe there is an individual that is here representing a group of neighbors, perhaps. We are going to allow him to speak for a greater amount of time as he is representing several of you. So I do want you to recognize that if he is speaking on your behalf, that you're ceding your time to him for him to represent. Okay? So actually, why don't we start with that gentleman? I don't know who it is. If you could state your name.
Good evening. I'm Eric McClone, and I've put out a formal request that I'd like to read in an effort to provide the Planning Board with a clear and concise representation of our thoughts and concerns without repetition and similar comments.
You want to turn?
For undersigned.
Sorry, you want to turn that
sorry.
sheet around? So that way we can. Thank you.
The 4 undersigned parties request that the Planning Board allow us each of our 4 minutes to our representative, David Klinger.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, Dave.
So since this timer doesn't give me 15 minutes, I'm going to try to watch the clock.
May we have a moment to set up our exhibits, please, Madam Chairman?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. While he's setting those up, Madam Chairman, I would like to pass out to the commission members a package for each one of you so that we can go along through this presentation. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Yes, Gary.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. I would also, if you could turn the posters in such a way that maybe a little bit this way so that audience can see this one and that audience can see that one, just so. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Vanna. Do you have a copy to share with the? What? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Chairman, I'm ready to go on the time clock.
All right. Okay.
How long do I have?
You have, would 15 minutes suffice?
15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have the overhead light? This exhibit. Is that, oh, I turned the other way.
Upside down, yeah. And I'll give you a 5-minute warning at the end.
Is it possible for me to come around here? Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely. As long as we can hear you, that's not a problem.
Okay, I think I can get started now. My name is David Klinger. I'm a land planner and a landscape architect. I've been in business over 40 years. I have over 300,000 people living in my projects in 40 states, so I hope I'm qualified to represent the owners here tonight. I'm usually on the other side representing developers, but when I saw what was proposed here, and having worked with Eric McClone in past developments, I thought I would offer my services to help them as a professional. So first of all, I'd like to discuss the history of this site. Now, back in 1982 and 83, there was a complete site plan developed for this property, and the neighbors there negotiated with the developer to come up with not only the plan, but a set of specifications, which were recorded in 1983 and went through all the process with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and these neighbors over these years have relied on these specifications so that they were ensured that the home values and their views of the front range would be protected. On the first section that I want to show you on the site development requirements, in parcel 1B, which is this site, the neighbors negotiated with the developers for a one-story commercial building, which has a maximum height of 30 feet. There was a two-story office, which a maximum height of 36 feet. The statement of the development objectives were the desire to be sensitive to the adjacent neighborhood. I will prove to you tonight that this is not sensitive to the adjacent neighborhood. Down on number 3, small scale, low density. In writing, and which duly recorded on the site development plan, the development of the project adjacent to the residential use is designed to be in scale with the neighborhood. I will prove to you tonight that this is not in scale with the neighborhood. Number 4, in building heights, the height of the building in parcel 1A and 1B is designed to gradually increase as you move away from the neighborhood. This developer is building a 4-story building that does not gradually increase away from the neighborhood. So this document was recorded in August 11th, 1983. It's in book and page, and I maintain that this document is not just a standard R4, R5, whatever, but it's a series of development specifications that are like a covenant with the land. It makes promises to the neighborhood that they can rely on over the years, and they have. This neighborhood is not against this assisted living facility. It's just the mammoth size of it in their face that they're upset with. Now, on number 2 in your package, there was a cross-section dated again in August in 1983, fully approved by you and the City Council, It's a cross-section through the site. And you can see in yellow what the neighbors were promised. And then across the street is the existing home where Eric lives. Then in red is the four-story, 51-foot building that will completely block all the views of the Front Range. This, again, was promised to the neighbors. Number 3 in your package is just to orient you again, and I think the developer did a good job showing the site plan, how it relates to the street system and the parking, so I'll dispense with that. But this will indicate to you where these views have been taken from, view A and view B as depicted on these exhibits. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, this is not a sloping site. This is a flat site. As you can see from this photo that I took the other day, 97% of this site is flat. The calculations that were used to provide a 10-foot additional height is totally misleading. You can see Eric standing here on the site looking to the north, and the only portion of the site to the east is a little slope, which is 3% of the site. That's on the east end. So it's our opinion that 97% of the site is flat. Therefore, this calculation entitling them to confuse people and giving them an additional 10-foot height is bogus. When the UBC is used, and Littleton uses on a sloping site, they use this 10 feet because on a true sloping site, the slope goes through the building. On this site, it's flat with a little slope, and they've oversized the building. And on number 6, you can see here where they've used the same building that they have in Thornton. They haven't reduced it to fit the site. They've jammed the site into this little slope, and then they have the audacity, in my opinion, excuse the hard language, to call this a sloping site where all this is flat. If they were designing this for this property, they would have made the building fit in this flat area and not played games with this 10-foot additional height. This is the photo of the project in Thornton. It's a 3-story building, and not only do they want to confuse us with this 10-foot additional entitlement, but they have built a 3-story building in Thornton, and now they want to add another floor in the face of these homeowners on this site to a 51-foot building. There are many buildings in the Front Range. This one is down on Broadway, number 8, and Arapahoe, and you can see this is a memory care and assisted living facility, 1 and 2 stories. There are many assisted living centers all over the Front Range. Another one is in South Park, and it's a 1-story assisted living facility. So there are plenty of these that are not 4-story, 51 feet in height. Now, Madam Chairman, I'm going to show you visual simulations that we have hired a professional to prepare. These simulations are using a controlled, mathematical-driven computer graphics system, and this gentleman has done these types of studies all over the state. So I'd like to submit this to you to qualify that this is not just a bunch of pretty pictures, but these are very accurate from the places they were taken.
Thank you. Sure. And you have about 7 minutes.
I've gone 10 so far? Okay, thank you.
Almost.
Okay, the first photo I would like to show you is from viewpoint A. Viewpoint A is taken from Mr. McClone and Mary's house over here on the main level. This is the photo from the main level looking at the site. As you can see, there's a fence here in their backyard, and you can see the front range in the photo. When you utilize the heights of the building as proposed by the developer, you can see from the first level the blockage of the views from this main level in the backyard. The second photo, B, is taken from the upper deck of the house, where they have a beautiful deck and patio where they enjoy the views of the front range and the openness. This will be the view that they will see if this structure is built on this site. I would suggest to you that if this was my house or your house, you would also be extremely upset, because all these things were promised in the past, duly recorded, and now they come along with this very large structure right in the face of these homeowners. The findings of fact, is my opinion on this case, are based on studying all the exhibits. Again, I've been doing this for 45 years, and I've never seen such a level of disregard for what was agreed to on the approved plan development plans in 1983. The site development requirements and specifications are being violated by this proposal. The applicant is misrepresenting the building height. Relative to the very important issue of the height, the South Neighborhood Plan, as defined in the Littleton Comprehensive Plan and the city-wide plan, each mandate the importance of adequate buffering between adjacent residential uses from adverse effects of commercial use, and directs the protection of residential areas from negative visual intrusions of commercial development. Now, some would argue that this isn't a commercial development, and some would say it falls under the office. But by the applicant's own submission to you, his proposed zoning district is PDC-C. He admits in his application that it's commercial. So by their application, the maximum height, according to the existing recorded specifications for this property, is 30 feet. Their proposed 51-foot height building is 70% higher than the maximum heights agreed to and recorded in book and page in 1983. The existing maximum on the PDP site plan in 1983 is for 55,800 square feet, but they are proposing 98,650 square feet. This is a 77% increase on this site. Madam Chairman, Ms. Moore, and gentlemen, this is a huge 4-story building. It's superimposed on a small site, and it will loom all over the adjacent homes. It will devalue these homes along the road and between the road and this proposal. The developer made very little changes after homeowner meetings, disregarding their rights, which were spelled out after going through the due process the Planning Commission and City Council in 1983. They are asking you to protect their rights as residents of Littleton. This is an unreasonable request. If they want to build an assisted living center in Littleton, there are more appropriate sites available, which will not negatively affect viable residents and neighbors. After reading the Community Development Report, which was dated August 14th of this year, to Mr. Swentz, the developer, we assumed that the planning staff would not support this proposal. And I'd like to quote in ending the staff's letter on what it said to Mr. Swentz in August of 2014. The primary concern, I'm quoting now, with the requested PD plan modification is that the additional height together with additional square footage would be out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood. Now, this is coming from the planning staff in August. One of the major objectives of the existing PD plan, as stated on the cover sheet, is to be, quote, sensitive to the adjacent neighborhood. Building heights were planned to gradually increase away from the single-family homes and be in scale with the existing neighborhood. Staff does not find justification for the height modification at this time and is not supportive of this request. Then the other day, out of the blue, comes a report where the staff approves this. We are very upset with what happened here between August and now, and we didn't have the time to readjust, and all the developer did was lower the building 2 feet. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, we have about 26 people that have signed up. I know several of these people have ceded their time for this presentation. So what I'm going to do in the essence of time is just call out those individuals who have said that they do want to speak and confirm whether or not they still wish to. If you are adding upon what we have just heard, I welcome that. If you are reiterating, I just ask that you just reiterate whether you're for or against this. No need to make the same presentation. Okay. And for the board here, just to give you some perspective, out of the 26 signups here, we have about 3 or 4 that are in favor, and the remainder are not in favor. But I'm not going to go through each one. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Brent Millspouse is not in favor of the project and wishes to speak. Do you still wish to speak? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I'm just here representing the Oak Brook Homeowners Association as president, and we are against, I just want to let you know we're against the planned development. We don't see the economic impact that they laid out, especially they mentioned that people would go to restaurants and things like that. And I think we've all been to assisted living centers. Generally, you just go to the cafeteria if there's one. I mean, for the most part, and you don't know if they do leave. You don't know if they're going to go to a Littleton or down the way. I just think when there's everything on site, there's really no economic impact to the community overall. And also, I got to fight for the homeowners with potential loss in value due to the one particular section of houses. It's a ripple effect through the rest of the neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Karina, are we still requiring people to say their name and address?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not say your name?
I didn't. My name is Brent Millspaw.
Did you get that recorded? Yeah.
And address.
I'm sorry, an address. I don't do this often. So I have the rest of these guys keeping me in track.
Again, my name is Brent Millspaw. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association with Oak Brook, and I'm at 7638 South Pennsylvania Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next one, Alan Tuffield is not in favor in the project and does wish to speak. Okay, thank you. Kathy Kennedy, Tuffeld, thank you, is not in favor of the project. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay. And James Peterson, not in favor of the project. Do you wish to speak? Okay. Okay. Paul Dish is in favor of the project and wishes to speak. And I'm sorry if I did not say that correctly. You can correct me now.
Paul Deach. I am at 2285 South 67th Street, Suite 250, Omaha, Nebraska 68106. Here on behalf of Oak Brook Shopping Center, the owners of the anchor and inline shops adjacent to the project. Would just like to say that as the adjacent owner, we are not opposed to the project. We had concerns about parking, for instance, but feel that this use is less intensive than any use that's permitted already under the existing zoning. Drainage and maintenance of the site were concerns. We think that actually having a development on the site will certainly improve the current situation, which is essentially a dirt bike track, and enhancement of the center's utility with a complementary use. We've been waiting for 30 years to have another anchor on our site to bring additional traffic to our shops. We've come to the realization that that is quite unlikely to happen. In real estate and in city planning, we all know that things change. Things have changed for this site. We would still love to see a retail shop go in there, but not expecting that. We believe that this is the next best thing available for the site. We'd rather have it developed than continue to sit vacant.
Okay. Thank you. Stephen Elkin is in favor of the project and wishes to speak.
My name is Steve Elkin, 1873 South Bel Air Street, Suite 1105, Denver 80222. I'm also on the development team as the operator. I own 5 senior communities, 4 here in Colorado, another one outside of Omaha, Nebraska. I also own conventional apartments too. So if there are questions on the building or the operation of the building, on employees and things of that nature, I'd like to address a couple of things that Mr. Klinger said. The biggest problem I have difficulty with, and maybe you can explain it to me, on a scale, from a scale standpoint.
Sir, you need to address the board.
If you could put it right here.
How do you do this? Oh, perfect. So if this represents 30 feet, how does this represent 50 feet? If you double this, that would make it 60 feet, wouldn't it?
You're addressing us and not the audience. But you've made your point. You should be addressing this to us.
Okay. So I'm having a little trouble on when you're saying the developing team is
Sir,
trying
you need to address your comments to the board.
It's us. Just state your
About
point
that. So I think if the drawings would be entered in as a exhibit to the committee, the drawing should be a little bit more accurate on what it's displaying. As it relates to the issue on density and in-your-face type of things, I think the whole world, development-wise, changes. I was in some of the early meetings when Stapleton, for the master planning for Stapleton. And I got to tell you, even commercial guys were objecting to some of the things that went on in Stapleton. I was at the meetings for a lot of Fitzsimmons redevelopment. And I got to tell you that we are very fortunate in the Rocky Mountain region to have the VA hospital that way it sat 20 years ago to where it sits today. And that's a quite larger density type of thing. So density issues evolve as well, too. What may have been more common practices in 83, in 93 they changed, in 2003 they changed, in 2013 they changed. I've read a couple articles that Mr. Klinger has written encouraging smaller lots, greater distance or less distances between homes and things like that, too. So real estate changes, uses changes. The community in general changes. There was never a need for the amount of assisted living or senior housing that is being built now and will be built in the future. I can't begin to tell you how many letters we get from my oldest retirement center I have is approximately 27 years old. We actually got a rezoning that was 2 stories up to 3 stories. We still get letters from neighbors what a great asset we are to the community. When you look at a church building, churches are usually used by right, no matter what zonings are in a lot of municipalities. Church buildings are a lot bigger than most of the homes around it, but they become an important, integral part of that community, of that general area. That's what this building is trying to do, is trying to become an important part of the integral of the general area. I do know how many children will be shopping at stores. They will be shopping at stores. The staff that works at this building will be frequenting the restaurants. So to say that it's zero and everybody's going to be eating on site is not an accurate statement either. So I guess I'm here to answer any questions as an operator, and I'm not saying I'm an expert in senior housing, but I've been in it about 30 years, so I can probably clarify or answer some of the questions like that.
Okay, thank you. We have Tom Castle is for the development and wishes to speak.
My name's Tom Castle. My address is 2761 Kendrick Street in Golden, Colorado. My wife and I have owned this property for a little over 20 years now. I'm also the president of Sullivan Hayes Brokerage here in Denver, and I can assure you that we've exhausted an enormous amount of effort trying to attract a retail footprint to this piece of property. It was certainly our intent when we first acquired the property to add a junior box to what at the time was a Safeway anchored center because of Safeway's exit and just the evolution of retail and where junior anchors are in fact locating. We have not been successful at that. The site was characterized as being flat. The access point reaches around the site, and the grade, I think, is the maximum grade allowed in a PD to pick up the grade between the street and the footprint of what would be the building in the property, which forces us to look at a facility that can fit on one footprint and utilize an entrance at what is essentially at grade, which is toward the western end of the property. It doesn't lend itself to being chopped up into multiple spaces. We've been very excited about the effort that the team has put together in this project. We think it's wonderful for the property, the neighborhood, for all of us that have aging parents, and Obviously, it's a use that is very little impact in my mind on the neighborhood and on the rest of the property, and allows everything to continue functioning. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You can ask the developer. Let's see. I have Jennifer Peterson is not in favor and wishes to speak. Do you still wish to speak, Jennifer?
Hello. This is a very intimidating environment.
All right.
So I will just let you know I'm a director, a department head. I work in this direct field.
I'm sorry, you have to state your name and your address first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jennifer Peterson, 507 East Phillips Drive North, one of the 5 main houses next to the McClones. I've been in healthcare over 30 years. I direct a nutritional services department, and I've been in the same facility here in Littleton for 27 years. And I'm very familiar with the structure of occupancy of bed hold. I'm very nervous right now. I'm very familiar with occupancy of bed hold. I'm very familiar with all the corporations. I'm familiar with all the money making. I'm familiar with it all. And I'm very committed to my facility. I'm very familiar with the state health department. We have a very good record with the state health department, and I do know what it takes to run a building and keep it in good shape like that. But what I'm very disappointed and why I don't support this is because I've seen beautiful assisted livings, beautiful skilled, beautiful facilities, 80, 90 bed that are gorgeous, that would build a Littleton area. I am very disappointed in a loving, caring way. I'm a very genuine person, speaking from my heart. I understand money. I've worked for a corporation for many, many years, but I'm watching the clock too. But I'm very disappointed they didn't change their structure to following the codes, which this wonderful gentleman took so much time to support, to a 2-story. I would have been very much in favor of them following the code of everything else we talked about. It's the height and the monotony of this building that has really, really made me very, very highly disappointed. And I do know the staffing in dietary alone, in food service. I do know the amount of staff that's going to move in and out. They can have an innocent, I'm saying they maybe didn't really know, looking to a certain projection. I see the kind of movement that happens right over here where I work. We want our loving families visiting. We encourage the families to visit. It's a tremendous amount of movement and a tremendous amount of activity. So what I'm most disappointed in is the size of the building and the height, but also some of the other things that were not really totally looked at in terms of the kind of movement that's going to happen in this type of industry. So I was nervous to get up here, but I did want to express my feelings about that had they followed the height restriction and been more realistic about that, this would have been fine. But when you double that, you can double occupancy, you can add beds, you can do all kinds of things. We've done it in our facility. We went from 1 and then we went to skilled, and we have a 48 subacute unit, and it didn't start out like that. Things change, things grow, and I am for progress. But I am not for the size of this building for all the other reasons that were defined. So thank you very much from my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. You did great. Okay. Let's see. Mary McClone is not in favor of the project, and do you wish to speak? Okay. Also known as Vanna.
Pardon?
Also known as Vanna. You were.
Yes, Vanna. That's my second row. My name is Mary McClone. I live at 517 East Phillips Drive in Littleton in the Oakbrook Shopping Center. You saw my house on the little drawing there. My husband and I are original owners, and we've lived in Oakbrook for 31 years. We are loyal, active citizens who value our community and value our city. We bought our home in 1982 with full knowledge that the land behind us would someday be developed. We actually welcomed the collaborative effort between the city and the developer and the neighborhood where we negotiated in good faith a PD plan that would meet the needs of residents and the retail center. Have times changed? Of course they have. Have the objectives of these good faith negotiations written into the site development plan changed? No, they have not, as indicated by language, such as one of the major objectives to evolve from the development of this project is the desire to be sensitive to the adjacent neighborhood. This concern is critical to the overall success of the project. The height of the buildings in Parcel 1A and 1B are designed to gradually increase as you move away from the neighborhood. Indeed, the agreed-upon objectives were outlined so specifically, we believe, to ensure the commitment over time. We have all relied on the language of the TV plan and have invested in the improvement of our properties to the improvement of our neighborhood and to the city. Tonight, I stand here to deliver the message that the neighborhood stands together in support of the current PD plan. Pictures, please. What I have over here is a map of the area. The pink is the development area. And the homes over to the right that are highlighted in yellow are homes that have signed our formal protest, which I'll give you a summary of in a minute. The homes over here that are not highlighted were either vacant homes or not home. This was just an initial effort and took very little effort at all to get these signatures. And if it would benefit the Planning Commission, we can certainly get more signatures. But the protest, briefly, I'm not going to read the whole thing because we can all read, but just in summary, states that specifically protests and objects to any change in the PDC use, currently zoned retail commercial, and or any increase of the maximum building height as to Parcel 1B, such as those changes described and proposed. So I wanted to give you that. I also have 2 letters that I will give you from neighbors that could not be here. And one of them was a business that is actually not in favor. So tonight we ask you to be our representatives in this process and seriously consider our questions and concerns. Why the change in the city staff opinion from the August 14th Technical Review Committee report that indicated non-support for the proposed development to the current recommendation you have in front of you that seemingly without reservation supports the development? What conditions truly changed? Has the developer made a sincere effort to address the concerns of the neighborhood, and is there evidence? Has the building height actually changed significantly? It changed from a proposed 53-foot building to a 51-foot building, no matter how you choose to measure it. Has the original negotiated language on the PD plan been considered and honored? Does this center truly best meet the needs of our aging community by placing it in the middle of a retail center? Does this plan meet the retail needs of the surrounding and outlying community? What kind of tax base are we potentially giving up? And finally, most importantly, as those that are tasked with the responsibility of good governance and good planning, we ask you to take a moment and please ask yourself, are we being asked to take drastic action too quickly with one uncompromising option presented? Is this really the best we can do? Is Littleton open for business even when it doesn't fit? I ask those in the audience who agree with our concerns to please raise your hand in support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I forgot to mention, there's 97 signatures on here.
Okay, we will now.
Oh, and thank you for moving us to the front of the line. We appreciate that, too.
Okay, we're now closing the public process. So any final questions from the board to the developers or staff? I'll open it up for questions.
I'll start.
Excuse me, the applicant needs an opportunity to
I'm
rebut
sorry,
the public
please.
testimony.
If the applicant would like to come up and respond to any comments or questions posed by the public, please.
Yeah, if you give me just 1 minute, I'm going to pull it back to a slide here. Again, George Swintz, representing the applicant. My address happens to be 1810 Highlands Drive in Breckenridge, Colorado. It was a rough drive down today. Yeah, I'm not going home. We've all had our share of negative political advertising of late, and I am not going to try to get brought into any of that. We're trying to present facts, and that's why we pay you guys the big bucks to sort this. We have met with neighbors multiple times, and we've had a cordial conversation, and some of the things that we say may be offensive to them, some of the things that they present might not sit all that well with us, but here are the facts as we see it. This particular slide represents that, in fact, Eric and Mary's house is impacted, and the two on either side of it are impacted. There is a very difficult time blocking our front range, and so the impact of our project on those homes you cannot argue. The other homes on either side, or the nursery property to the south of it, they're not impacted by our building. There's a lot of good things that happen. There are some compromises that will be made. I would suggest that we've been asked to design a project based on the interpretation of code, which I would submit that when we started on this, maybe the reason, staff can comment, but maybe the reason they said, there's maybe a change in what they had said wasn't because of anything we did. It was because we pressed them to give us an answer on how you interpret the code. As I understand, it's not just planning staff, but it is the building department that says, yes, this is the way we've done it. So we've designed a project. We've paid for surveys. We paid for planning, architecture, earnest money. We've got $150,000 to $200,000 invested in this project as well. I think it's hard to suggest what the implication is on those three homes and how it ripples through the rest of the community. I appreciate all of you I'll address you, but to them, it's an all for one, one for all kind of neighborhood. I get that. I understand that. I've been in those neighborhoods, and I'm glad they're rallying behind the people that are impacted most by this. I can't argue that there isn't an impact. Some of the slides that were shown, particularly the one with the fence in front of it and the building right behind, I don't think that really fairly represented the 80 feet that we're actually away from the project. It was suggested that our site is flat, but the front part of our site is at the elevation of 5,659 feet, and the Phillips Drive elevation is 5,680 feet. There's 21 feet of difference between our grade and where their homes are. I want to look at a couple extra slides here. If you can see this or turn around at a bigger scale, this is an example of a retail building. And the impact of the retail building is significant as well. If you do a retail building or an office building that is 40,800 square feet, it's probably bigger than the retail building that's represented there. So what's allowed by code is a flat-sided building with no windows in it, back of the house, if you will, retail building that has an impact on the views of those homes regardless. You can't get away from the fact that what happens on this site is going to have an impact from a visual standpoint and from an intensity of use standpoint. Our footprint is 28,000 feet. It is a four-story building, but you could put a 40,000 square foot building there. You could snug that building all the way into the hill just like we have done it, and it's going to have that kind of an impact. The slides that were shown of nursing product, typically of single-story product, is typically a nursing product. We are not doing nursing, as I showed you before. It's an assisted living facility that we're doing. I think Steve made the comment about buying of meals that are there, and Jennifer Peterson's emotional ploy there, I think, is everybody feels heartfelt about that. We would just point out that not discrediting Jennifer whatsoever, but her experience is a nursing experience. It's different than our assisted living, and the intensity of the assisted living is less. There's no question about it, of an of a nursing facility. This next slide shows you the roadways that go around our center. We are around our vacant site. We're bound by the access. They're easements. We can't move them. It's how you get in and out of Noddle's center. The site can't be configured any other way than the way our building is set up on it. And we would suggest that it's not the blank flat side of our building that is visible from the neighborhood. It's an oblique angle. It's showing different segments of our H, if you will. And the perspective of that, we think, is an approved one versus just the retail-sided building. There was a question raised by the neighborhood about the selection of this particular site and put it in a shopping center. The reason we've selected this site is because we want to be in an underserved area. If you looked at a map that I didn't happen to bring where competition is, there isn't any competition that's close to this. So this is serving a neighborhood. And again, all for one for all. I appreciate that, but I also think that there are probably neighbors who have senior parents that would really enjoy having them close to their home, and they're not impacted by the view of the project. I'm almost through. You could put a lot of uses there. I won't read this list to you, but there's a lot of intense uses that could go on this site, presenting a whole nother myriad of complications. I'd submit that we could fill this site. We could raise it and orientate it to Phillips Drive. So the building could be at the highest elevation and then going up from there versus setting it down into the hill. So even a one-story building or a two-story building on a filled site there is going to have an impact that's just as significant of what we've planned. I made the comment about the oblique perspective and that we have benefits for the homeowners in the neighborhood. You know, and I went to shopping center tenants. It's hard to find a shopping center tenant to come in and say, we'd really love you to be there, because guess what? All these folks are buying goods and services from them as well. So they're not going to come and say, we want this, but it will definitely help their center revitalize. And they don't want to speak because they don't want to upset the neighborhood for fear they won't be coming shopping. There's someone here that would say that.
Please, we've closed the public comment.
I'm speaking factually. There's a tenant who was here who told me he would not speak in behalf for that exact reason. The site's been sterilized for 25 years. It's time to put it in use. There's an economic impact that can be made now. And two last slides. There are goals for the South neighborhood. We think we meet those goals. The first goal is to develop regional employment and buffer it from adjacent residential. As I pointed out early in our presentation, there is no buffer. There is no park, school, single-family, townhouse transition here. This neighborhood butts up against the commercial development. It is what it is. Second goal, I don't think we impact the water quality. Third goal of the South neighborhood is the South neighborhood plan is what I'm referring to here, is to provide adequate vehicular access without introducing traffic on residential streets. Our traffic is lower than any other use that would be on the site. Fourthly, the project, or to protect residential areas from negative visual, audible intrusions from commercial industrial development. This is to make sure there aren't any smokestacks, so there isn't outside storage, so there isn't reflective glass, so there isn't bright lights that shine into the neighborhood. We won't do any of those things. We think we are a pretty decent buffer between the commercial and the residential. We don't tax the mass transit system, which is the fifth goal, to provide adequate mass transit, and the fourth goal is to provide and maintain infrastructure. We don't load up schools, we don't load up parks, we don't load up utilities. We're not an intense use. I think that I have covered all of my rebuttal. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. For the board, any just final questions, then I'm going to ask for a motion.
Yeah, I have one, actually. Can he come back?
Sorry.
Do you happen to know the incline? How wide is that? It's a little hard to see from the pictures. It looks like it kind of is a sharp incline there. How wide is that?
Can staff pull up the second slide that you had? It showed actually the survey on your PowerPoint. I don't have the survey in it, which would show the topography, and we might scale it off the width of the 30-foot easement of the drive lane.
While you're looking that up, I have a similar question if you have it at your fingertips. There was a statement made that 97% of the area was flat. Do you know what percent of the area is flat versus at an incline?
I think we'll be able to see from the topo map if Andrea can bring it up. Sorry to put you back on the spot here. For sake of expediency, why don't we use this? If you can put this back up here, Ann. Is that how you do it? Who gives me the camera overhead?
Doug, can we have the camera, please?
Did you find it? Okay.
See, okay.
Yeah, it's a little light. Okay, why don't you pull that one up?
If you can't find it, I think I've somewhat answered my own question here. And while they're looking, can I ask you do you know how many units are in some of their other facilities? I think you mentioned there's one in Thornton.
How many units are in other competitive facilities?
No, didn't you say this company owns another facility?
Oh, yeah. Ranging from about 112 to 135, depending upon, actually even a little more than that, because one of our other current projects has 28 memory care units in it, and then the assisted living is another 115 units. So 145 units. That's on a bigger site. It's on a 5-acre site. So I don't know if this pointer will work up there, but let's see. So if you look, it goes away. Oh, there we go. So the width of the drive lane here is 30 feet from curb to curb. So the width of the driveway, geez, it looks like I'm nervous, but I'm actually very calm here. This is maybe 60 feet into the corner because the topo lines get flat at the top. So it's probably 30 feet around and then over here as well. That answer your question on the topo?
Thank you.
That is an existing survey that we just paid for in the last 6 months.
Okay. So rough math, or no, not rough math, what percent of that how would you define flat on that map?
Well,
relatively flat.
There's probably 15% of the site that's sloped.
Okay.
You want to wager a different number?
No, I would just be here for.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold me up, Kevin.
Thanks. Any final questions?
Is there any restriction to building onto the parking lot section?
I was trying to figure out
The southern part of the property, this map cuts off, and then there's the whole parking lot below that. Is there any restriction in designing and building on that section?
The restriction would probably be from the shopping center existing owners and tenants. Some of the out parcels, like Burger King is right next to it and Three Margaritas, don't want a tall building that'll block them there. And
I'm sorry, we just can't have that.
the shopping center is designed so it's visibly accessible into the tenants that are there. You don't put the higher structures in the front of it. Could you move it to the front? Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Do we have anyone have a motion? And then we'll have discussion after the motion. Okay, I'll do it. Motion to recommend approval of Planning Board Resolution number 20-2014, which forwards a recommendation of approval to City Council. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, comments?
I always start.
I looked this way first.
Cover so much out the gate, so.
Please, go ahead. It's all right, Mark.
I'll go if you don't want.
Well,
all right, I'll go.
I'll follow.
Mark's being shy. I think the addition, I think there is good merit to the argument of having a assisted living facility down in the south end of town. And I also would imagine that they could be a very good neighbor to the existing neighborhoods. I also think that it's sort of this entire project strikes me as a redo towards a mixed-use policy or a mixed-use development that could really add some value down there. I do believe it will activate the mall. I believe that it will help some of the retail tax base and really take a mall that's in my humble opinion underperforming and give it some life and a nice thing. And I believe the design to be quite nice. It's a little boring in terms of its design, but it's a nice looking facility. But I don't believe it meets the criteria of architecture of place. It doesn't have anything unique to Littleton that I'm seeing there. This property does sit in a prime retail corridor, and we often talk of losing our retail in Littleton, and there's always comment of there's not a market for it, there's not a demand for it. I would think something off 470 might provide that. All that said, I think there's plenty of land for a little bit of a redesign here. I think staying within the existing height rules, staying within the existing zoning is possible. To all that end, I think the pitched roof is possible with a little bit of a more flat design that's more respectful of the outside neighborhood and becoming aware of this document. If I have a contract with the city on the land behind my house, I expect that contract to be honored. And so I would argue that I think that holds some merit there. I think there was decent effort to create buffer within the existing neighborhood, but clearly I think the height is a little bit exaggerated there. So if there was a possibility to redesign this so that you could utilize more of the space, ideally have similar amounts of units, similar amounts of density, and similar amounts of services being provided to our community, I think that would be great. But as is, I just don't think it fits well with where that property is. I also, so that's sort of where I'm standing right now. I think the same amount of use can be done on the same site without the view corridor breakdown there. And I want to commend all the neighbors who have come together here. This is an impressive showing. I appreciate you coming tonight.
Okay.
Mark?
Nice
How did your warm up?
I feel this project is less intensive use than anything commercial that could go in there. So any argument that the intensity is greater, I don't believe. I believe that this facility would have a positive economic impact on the community as well as the center itself. as Andrew said, people using the restaurants, people staying in hotels nearby, et cetera, et cetera. There's also a need for this facility in our community, and if you notice, they're popping up all around us for a good reason. There's a market, and there's somebody to take advantage of that market. The Heights is the big stumbling block for me, and I think both sides are finagling the numbers. The neighborhood rep is incorrect in his assessment as to the site. It obviously at one time was a sloping site. Somebody flattened it out, but originally it was a sloping site. So I think that 10-foot height beginning of the height calculation for the building is correct. It's a city regulation in the zoning code. Every neighborhood has height limits using somewhat the same criteria. So if it's good enough for your house, to protect your house, protect your neighborhood, it's good enough for the developer. I do feel that the applicant and the city is finagling a little bit on what is the starting point. They say 36. I look at it 30. 36 makes it look better when you're only 4-5 feet above versus 11 feet above. I don't feel that the height is in keeping with the neighborhood, although I do struggle with the rights of a view. I don't have a right to a view in my neighborhood. When the house in front of me was built, it blocked my sight of the mountains. Same with your neighborhood. But we do have a covenant here. It's from 1983. It is the site development plans. It talks about stepping back from the neighborhood. It talks about being in scale with the neighborhood. It does talk about the 30-foot height limit, as well as a 36 for an office versus 36 for an office versus 30 foot for commercial. So when I buy a house next to a commercial piece of property, I would want to look and see what is permitted, what is allowed, and I buy subject to what I find out about that development. And I take that as somewhat a covenant between me and the city and the planning board and the city departments that approved this 1983 site development plan. So I like the development for the reasons I gave. I have problems with the height, and therefore I'll be voting against this this development as designed.
Any other comments?
I just want to say I think we need facilities like this. I think we need facilities like this in Littleton, especially with our aging population. As I look at the comprehensive plan, you can't put one in front of the other. I think they're all equally important, what our values are and our visions. And one of the values is the importance of its citizens and resources. So I have to look at that as much as how this facility will bring business to Littleton as well. So.
I agree with Mark on many of his comments. I believe that the city does not have any view easements. When I purchased my home in the city 22 years ago, we had wonderful mountain views, and with the homes that were built and then the trees that were planted, which are much higher than the homes now, we have virtually no mountain view. So there's no guarantee of that view. I agree that there was an agreement in this 1983 plan, and that's why I would like to propose an amendment rather than have this come back to us again. Maybe we can take care of it tonight. And I would like to propose an amendment to reduce the height limit to 36 feet, which is the two-story office plan available and which could have been built there without coming before us under the current PD. So that's my proposed amendment at this time.
Okay. So
is that a motion to amend the
motion to
the main
amend
motion? Is there
the
a
height
second?
limit to 36 feet?
Okay. I'm going to make a couple of comments as well. I completely agree with the use of this property, the land use and what's proposed here. I think that makes for, fulfills many needs of the comprehensive plan, in particular the need for housing stock that supports the city's change and growth that we'll see in that demographic. So I do think and very much support the use. I like my fellow board members here, the height is a stumbling block for me as well, and the impact. Now, while it is, mountain views are never guaranteed, and while we say this is really only affecting 3 property owners, I think it's affecting a community. People that live in that neighborhood are walking around in that neighborhood, walking their dogs, taking their children for a walk. Even as I was driving through that neighborhood and other neighborhoods in Littleton, it's nice to, kind of look over your shoulder and see the mountains in front of you. So it's not just about the 1 or 2 or 3 houses. I do think it's about the community there. So I can appreciate that. So I think where we stand from a process perspective is we vote first on the approval of the amendment. Okay.
Correct. This vote will be on amending the main motion to reduce the height to 36 feet.
Okay.
Can I have a question?
Just a sec.
Oh, I'm not ready. The existing zoning already says that. Does that mean we have to vote to just say within existing zoning?
I think what you're saying is that for an assisted living, it could go to 36 feet, whereas the PD says office will allow 36 feet. That's how I interpreted the amendment.
And commercial as existing zoning is 30 feet.
The retail is 30 feet.
As calculated with the little drawing that we have for calculating heights.
Per code, right.
How does this impact setbacks and all that? Would it remain the same?
The amendment is only to change the height limit.
Right.
Right.
So it's the current proposal adjusted to the height of 36, no other changes. That is what.
So the current
proposal is 41
foot 1 inch.
Correct.
And you're not going to say 36 foot 1 inch. You're saying 36 feet. Okay.
Claire? Ready to vote? Sorry, I didn't turn that off before. Okay. Okay. Now do we need to close on the original motion of approval or no?
So, yes, now you would be voting on a motion to approve the resolution with the condition that the height for assisted living facilities be set at 36 feet.
That's what we just voted on.
You were amending the motion to approve the resolution to provide for 36 feet.
Okay.
So now you're voting to approve that resolution with the condition that was approved to reduce the height to 36 feet.
Do you guys understand that? Okay.
We're approving it as amended.
Approving the motion as amended, correct.
We're voting.
Not display the vote until
Yes,
we've all
sorry.
voted. Okay.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. Claire?
Very much.
All right. Thank you.
That was a short one.
Resolution.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break to prepare for the next section of our agenda. So we'll make it please a really quick 5 minutes if we can.
We have to decide.
start. Are we ready?
Madam Chair, I guess just to start off on the process, so I believe the board's intent was to discuss both urban renewal areas as a joint and then also take public hearing on both, but then you'll take separate actions on each board.
Yes.
On each urban renewal area.
Yes, exactly. I know it created confusion the last time, so just to, again, reiterate, also in the essence of time, though, again, I'm not trying to rush anything here, but what we will do is have Ann Ricker present the urban renewal plans for both of the study areas. I will then open it up to public comment and ask you to come up and speak to both if you have comments on both, and please also articulate your comments if they are one, both, one or the other, or both, and I'll allot the timing for that. So, okay, so we'll start with Glenn.
Just real quickly, Chairman and board members, so LIFT is the city's urban renewal authority. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and they are
Glenn, I'm going to stop you for a second.
Relative to these two matters, I need to recuse myself because I have a financial interest in certain properties within the areas. So I'm going to step down for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, get started again. The LIFT board is asking the planning board to basically recommend to the city council that the proposed urban renewal authority plans before you are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Prior to the adoption of the plan by the LIFT board, they did, which occurred on October 20th, they had a public meeting, was held on October 13th to take input from the public as well as the property owners who are affected within these areas, and answered questions by the consultant team and the LIFT staff. What we've done is gone through the comprehensive plan and laid out some sections that we think makes these plans consistent with the comprehensive plan. And that are the policies 1.1, which the plan states to generate more opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play where they work, and to work, shop, and play where they live. That's a tongue tweezer there. 1.5, identify the activity areas, and we've included the map within these urban renewal areas. And as you can see, both are identified as activity areas, such as those around light rail stations that might benefit from public-private investment. And certainly the tools afforded by urban renewal would be an example of public-private investment. Partner with private sector individuals and entities to explore, promote, and follow through with the best prospects. 1.6, encourage housing that responds to changing demands in the local housing market, allows every generation income group to call Littleton home and is otherwise consistent with this plan. Housing or assisted living certainly would be land uses that could ultimately come forward to you, consistent with the current zoning, but it doesn't have to be those land uses. And then 1.7, evaluate the redevelopment potential of blighted properties, work with owners throughout the redevelopment process to encourage sustainable uses and design to optimize mitigation of possible negative effects on adjacent uses. So with that, Planning Board, we are recommending that these urban renewal plans for North Broadway and Littleton Boulevard are consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Okay, Ann.
Chair and Planning Board members, thank you. I'll jump right in. The Littleton Boulevard, the proposed urban renewal area, again, just to remind you all from the last presentation, what you see in the properties that are shown, the boundaries of the proposed area is everything within the blue boundary of the map. The tan parcels are those that were included in the survey, but after reporting back to the LIFT board, They established certain criteria by which they would eliminate specific types of parcels, for instance, single-family residential houses that were occupied as a primary residence, churches, things like that. And so some parcels fell out, and the ones that are remaining, that are bright yellow within the blue boundary, that is the proposed urban renewal area for Littleton Boulevard. And then in Broadway, the exact same methodology. The tan parcels they were part of the survey, but taken out as part of the proposed urban renewal area, and the yellow parcels remain inside. The purpose of the plan, very similar to what you saw in the others. However, maybe you noticed it, maybe not, but we wanted to point out that we did hear some of the comments that you made during our last presentation to you. There was some exception that was taken to the use of past tense that you had been presented already. So we tried to take all that into consideration in these plans. So just wanted to make sure that you knew we heard you on that. But as the statute requires, the purpose of any urban renewal plan has to first and foremost be to reduce, eliminate, and prevent the spread of blight. And then also within the statute, it says that the plan is intended to promote local objectives expressed in adopted community plans and advance the priorities of the comprehensive plan. So as we've told you, the purpose of the urban renewal plan, while curing these negative conditions, is also it's intended to be an implementation resource for your comprehensive plan. And that, I can only assume, is why we come to you to make sure that the plan is consistent with that document, as that is under your purview. The plan objective, very similar, to alleviate those conditions of blight, but also actively promoting investment and reinvestment. We've added here within its commercial corridors, whereas this is the objective of this plan, and that is the goal stated throughout your comprehensive plan. In terms of development and design objectives, we make a pretty big point. We continue to make a big point that these are objectives, not standards, guidelines. This is not a regulating document. This document, we've stated numerous times, will comply with and be in conformance with any existing zoning and/or zoning regulations that may change, design standards. Again, we've put in as may be amended from time to time so that it's completely understood that those are the primary documents under which this is implementing those under those regulations. General objectives, redevelopment of properties for the purpose of generating revenue sufficient to fund public improvements. Again, we make a very important point there. If you read the urban renewal statute, it's not like just any improvement could be funded by urban renewal dollars. They have to be items of public benefit. That absolutely is left up to the interpretation of City Council and the Authority Board. Other urban renewal authorities have been interpreting that for decades now, and it's pretty obvious what provides a public benefit versus a personal gain. We list several of these development and design objectives. We've highlighted a few here. The first two, again, have to be the same in any plan, always to advance the intent of the comprehensive plan and eliminate those conditions identified in the survey. But also development of vacant and underutilized parcels. This comes right out of your comprehensive plan and actually your economic plan, and provide public infrastructure and make more efficient use of existing land. The others, we believe, are absolutely consistent with the goals and stated policies of your comprehensive plan. We just highlighted these because they're verbatim for what's in that adopted plan. Also, to improve the pedestrian realm in a manner consistent with the existing community character, and then again, encouraging growth and stability in local businesses. This was a key objective that came out of the public input over the course of the last several months. Within your comprehensive plan, your citywide plan, you have this stated vision, which was mentioned previously. And also these stated goals, again, we highlight those that we think are particularly relevant for what might be accomplished through the urban renewal plans in these areas. We've also, as you notice, referenced in the appendix section of both plans specific references that we think are relevant, but for the purpose of time, and that we highlighted a few within your goal statements that we think are particularly relevant. So for instance, under Goal 1, a dynamic Littleton, you state, evaluate the redevelopment potential of blighted properties, work with owners throughout the redevelopment process to encourage sustainable uses and design to optimize mitigation of possible negative effects on adjacent uses. So that's pretty specific and pretty relevant to urban renewal. Also under Goal 2, an outdoor Littleton, under one of the policies, you state identify locations. Now, in this instance, adjacent to the river that are appropriate for enlivening urban land uses, but you also go on to say to look for areas where restaurants can be accommodated for outside dining, multiple unit housing, outdoor related retailers, bicycle and rollerblade rentals, and other activities for people of all ages. You go on to say encourage inviting outdoor activity and gathering places in new developments too. So while one is obviously very specific to the river corridor, you do talk about encouraging more activity areas, more life on the street, people on the street, and it seemed to us that Littleton Boulevard in particular offers an appropriate environment for that. In Goal 3, you talk about a connected Littleton with walkability in that, and again, probably greater opportunities for that, connecting the adjacent neighborhoods to Littleton Boulevard. But if you spend any time on Broadway, there's still a good number of people that, are coming from the schools and some of the houses beyond the corridor and still using services on the corridor. The second section of your comprehensive plan is what you refer to as transformative actions. A couple that we highlighted, you said use tools such as small area plans, zoning, capital improvements, and other incentives to set the stage for redevelopment and new development in designated activity areas and corridors. Again, we thought that was particularly relevant. And then again, under Goal 4, encourage preservation of historic structures, districts, and places that are significant to Littleton history. I wanted to highlight that one, and I've seen comments and heard, especially recently, I think that there's a concern out there that somehow there's a rub between historic preservation and urban renewal, and I wanted to make a point that historic preservation and urban renewal are actually great bedfellows. In fact, I've spoken many, many times at the Colorado Historic Preservation Conferences and that on how urban renewal is used. I brought a couple of examples I can just leave you with. This is a publication by Colorado Main Street, which is part of Colorado Historic Preservation, and both groups are part of the National Historic Organization. And then also, this is a list from the Denver Urban Renewal Authority's website of all the projects within their area, not just downtown, and the vast majority are historic buildings that used urban renewal dollars to help keep them in their historic format. So I just wanted to make sure I left that. Okay. And then lastly, under transformative action 2 and 3, you talk about directing growth and that. And again, there's conversations in the plan, both about your activity areas and your corridors, which makes all kinds of sense because, the vast amount of revenue generation for the city comes from your commercial corridors. While not required to, we went ahead and looked at your economic plan, and while the statute says we have to make sure that we get back to you and make sure we're consistent with the comprehensive plan, because you had this newly adopted economic plan, and there are so many references between those two documents to each other, we went ahead and just highlighted a few things that we thought, again, were particularly relevant in the context of urban renewal. In that document, it states the city needs to approach the business community development process with a yes-first attitude and open mind and new tools that allow it to foster vitality. The city needs a plan that provides resources to retain and grow existing businesses and addresses the requirements for attracting new businesses. Some of the many things that were listed that we highlighted, obviously retain and strengthen existing businesses, attract new businesses, promote new growth and development. But also listed is improve or redevelop distressed or underperforming shopping areas and identify and improve undeveloped and underdeveloped properties along major corridors to meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. Some of the priorities stated in that plan, again, that we've highlighted: strategic revitalization along major corridors, Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, as well as Santa Fe are listed. Update those aging shopping centers, restore underperforming shopping centers, and revitalize the Northeast neighborhood. In terms of opportunities, infill development and redevelopment both obviously apply in these contexts. To wrap up some of the highlights of the plan, and this was really an emphasis to City Council as well, the statute allows for certain powers or activities to be carried out by an urban renewal authority. In this instance, the Urban Renewal Authority, LIFT, for Littleton, kind of passed along or deferred several activities, powers, controls to City Council. Some of the ones that can stay with the authority, if they've desired to stay with the authority, are investment in the public realm, encouragement of development consistent with or exceeding existing standards. Know that you all will have that purview to make sure any project that comes forward in any one of these areas, just like anywhere in the city, is up to those standards. And then the judicious use of limited resources. We talk about plan conformance, and that's what we're here for tonight. And, while we've stated that it is absolutely the intent, you're our stop before we go to the public hearing to make sure that, as it is stated, that the plan is consistent. But, the intent here in this statement is that every project that comes forward that in any way involves LIFT will be consistent with your comprehensive plan. And then we've listed here on this slide and the next, this is where in the plan we try and connect the dots between the condition survey and the urban renewal plan. So we say these were the conditions that were identified, and to the extent possible and as resources are available, the plan will seek to mediate, address those conditions while advancing the goals of the comprehensive plan. So we've done that there. And again, these are just some of the additional powers, activities, whatever, that under the statute are afforded to the Urban Renewal Authority. Whether these things come up, whether they come up once or twice or never come up, we just state and remind everybody that these are allowed under the statute. So if, in fact, these activities are undertaken by the Urban Renewal Authority in the context of these areas, it's not a surprise to anyone. And then finally, with regard to implementation, the statement is made that conditions of blight within the area will be remedied by the plan to the extent possible. There's no remedying if it requires money, and there's no money unless there's private investment. So to the extent possible as resources are available. And redevelopment by private enterprise, that's the only way these dollars are available, but will need to first be identified as a priority investment by the authority in consultation with the city and property owners. And what that means is that as LIFT continues to meet over time, they will do so in a public meeting forum as they have to date, and that as resources are available, they will discuss those in a public format and invite comment. Funding we talk about is the use of tax increment revenues. An important distinction here is that while under Colorado law, any authority is allowed to, within their planning areas, capture both property and or sales tax, some portion or all of the sales tax. What the LIFT Authority Board has elected to do and put in their plans is, yes to the property tax, but in terms of sales tax, they're saying that will continue to flow through to the city. Obviously, any urban renewal area can't capture county sales tax, so that even net new, that all goes to the county. But in terms of the city sales tax, that'll go to the city. But as projects come forward on an as-needed basis, if some project comes in, it's consistent with the plan, and their needs exceed the amount of property tax increment, they're just saying in the plan, they'll go to council, have to present a financing plan that proves that additional need, but ultimately it'll be up to council whether to approve that or not. So they've taken an extra conservative position in terms of the amount of tax increment financing revenues that'll be captured within these areas for use by the authority. In terms of the review process for the plan, again, as always, individual property owners come forward and request, I want to do a project in this area. They might need financial assistance, they might not. Many projects that happen in the area for one reason or other may or may not need those resources, but ultimately that will be up to the authority board to determine if it is a meritorious project, if it truly has need, if it's consistent with the objectives of the plan and the comprehensive plan. And again, we just reiterate that here. And then, this is the last slide, and just to say what the next steps are. Obviously, you're the last step before the public hearing for these two plans, but there's activities going on. In the interim, the taxing districts have been provided with notification of the plans. The county's been provided their impact report. Other impact reports have been prepared for all the other taxing entities as they may request meetings of representatives of the LIF board. The documents are available. So, this is it. You're our last important step before the public hearing. And that's it.
Thank you. Let's do some questions to Ann.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman. It's 10 o'clock, and under the council's legislative rules, we need formal action to extend beyond 10 o'clock.
Right.
So I'd ask for a motion.
So, given that, I guess we'll have to make a motion to either stop now and defer to a later date, or we can continue this evening. I think we can continue in a few different ways. We can plan on continuing through questions and public comment, given that we do have several citizens that have stayed up until now, so we can continue through the end of public comment and then close public comment at that point, and then proceed to deliberate at a next session. So I just want to make that clear that if we do continue tonight and we choose to close public comment, that will be the last opportunity that we will have to ask questions of Ann, I believe, as well as hear from citizens. And then we will use our next session more for deliberation. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue through public comment and then close the meeting.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Let's go ahead and vote on that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's take a public comment, and then we will open it up for questions then. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So I reviewed the sign up for both the North Broadway and the Littleton Boulevard. Actually, looks like it's pretty much the same individuals commenting on both. So as I said, when you do come up to speak, if you could be prepared to speak to both areas, and just please state so when you do that. Just don't want to create any confusion on that, and just want to make sure that we're also clear on your comments. So I will start with Ray Flesher is not in favor of either. urban renewal plans and does not wish to speak. Okay. Betty Harris is not in favor of either plan and does wish to speak.
Good evening, Board. I'm Betty Harris. I live in District 2. The Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan shows that plan creating 500 new apartment units. The Broadway Urban Renewal Plan shows creation of 150 new apartment units. Combining the two plans with the apartments created by the Santa Fe and the Columbine Square Plan, which has been approved by this board, imposes 1,346 new apartment units on the citizens of Littleton. These have to be apartments because the size of the area available will not support 1,346 single-family homes, and condos are not being built anymore. So I have some questions. Where does the comp plan call for conversion of commercial areas to apartments? Where in the plan is there a call for high-density residentials on commercial corridors? How does building 1,346 new apartments increase sales tax in Littleton when much of our retail is aging and or vacant? And can someone possibly answer this question? What is the cost to the city for each additional resident? One city council member said it was about $980 a year. So some simple math, with one person living in each apartment, that's $1.3 million in extra cost to our city, and I rather doubt that there'll be just one person in each one. The citizens of Littleton are offended with plans which result in commercial areas being turned into high-density apartments. But they are more offended with plans that will require them to subsidize the creation of those apartments with their tax dollars. I know this because I have been listening to them. It is time to listen to the people and act accordingly.
Thank you. Jeannie Erickson is not in favor of neither of the urban renewal plans and does wish to speak.
Getting kind of tipsy. My name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I understand that what you have in front of you this evening is to agree or disagree that these two urban renewal plans conform with the Littleton Comprehensive Plan. Because the comp plan is so wide open, which I was concerned about a year ago when it was approved, I'm sure these urban renewal plans will find some way to fit in, which I'm sure is what it was meant to do. A year ago when the comp plan was rewritten and we approved, we citizens of Littleton had no idea that urban renewal was just around the corner. But I'm sure the city manager, the LIFT chairman, and who knows how many city council members already knew this was going to be what the city thinks is best for the citizens of our city. Because of this non-transparency in our city government, this is why so many citizens of Littleton helped to circulate a petition. If passed, it will give us the right to vote on urban renewal issues. The citizens of Littleton have spoken loud and clear, and they do not want to be left out of major decision-making of our city. When an urban renewal project starts, monies are diverted from schools, the city, the county, urban drainage, and parks. This is where urban renewal gets their money to run their projects. This TIF, the taking of these taxes last for 25 years. Just think how long that is. Your children will probably be out of college by then, possibly married, and probably already have made you grandchildren. Some of you may even be great-grandparents by that time, by the time the money quits going to the Urban Renewal Authority. We do need to remember that the last urban renewal project, Riverfront, was a huge failure, costing the city of Littleton millions of dollars, along with the bondholders losing millions. By the way, I guess the blight and slum were never remedied on that site because it is blighted and slummed again, back in the urban renewal plan. I am also concerned about the historic and iconic and unique buildings along Littleton Boulevard. Many cities have made the mistake of scraping history in the name of progress. I hope Littleton does not make that mistake. I'm very concerned about urban renewal in general and the power it holds and the power given to non-elected board, the LIFT board. We currently have many projects going on in Littleton that are doing so without urban renewal, and I do not believe siphoning and diverting our taxes for 25 years or more is a solution to anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Clark is not in favor of either and does wish to speak.
Thank you.
And my wife asked me if I'd be home early tonight. Doug Clark, I live on scenic, beautiful Houston Waring. As I'm starting, I'd like to point out that the investment in the public realm, those three items that were listed on Ann Ricker's slide, are all excluded from the urban renewal plan. When the Planning Board passed the Santa Fe and Columbine urban renewal plans in September, some of you expressed your hope that the new checks and safeguards written into the urban renewal law, since Riverfront, would prevent the types of abuses and failures that happen with Riverfront. And we all know what a monumental failure Riverfront was at the cost of millions of dollars. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that that's not happening. Not only are the new safeguards being ignored, but the requirements which have been in place since before Riverfront are also being ignored. For example, the urban renewal law, now and at the time of Riverfront, requires that an urban renewal plan be submitted to the Planning Commission, you guys, for review and recommendation before that plan is approved by the City Council. In fact, this part of the urban renewal code is listed on page 2 of your report. Both the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan and the Columbine Square Urban Renewal Plan approved by the City Council were not the same plans which were submitted to you for your review and recommendation. Both plans were changed after you approved them and before they were submitted to the Council. We know that both plans, Section 6.12, were changed after you approved the plan. We don't know if other sections of the plans were changed, but we know that at least Section 6.2 was changed, and it was changed actually in different ways in each one of the two plans. I passed out to you a copy, which is here on the overhead, of 6.2 in the version that was submitted to you for the Columbine Square plan, and 6.12, and 6.12 in the version that was submitted to the City Council and the Columbine Urban Renewal Plan, and you'll notice that the dates on the plans are the same. So there's really no way of telling. We got both versions of these plans off the city's website. The Planning Board version came off of your meeting details, and the City Council's version came off the City Council's meeting details off the city's website. And by the way, one of the changes that was made was for the use of sales tax. And record described to you as a decision that the Lift Board made, but apparently they made that after they bothered to submit it to you. As I said, you'll notice that both of the dates on the plans are the same. There's actually no way of telling that the plans are changed. And if you watch the City Council meeting, the Lift Board never bothered to tell the City Council that they had changed the plans from the time that they submitted them to you. But don't take it personally, because it appears from the comments that the Arapahoe County sent that they also sent the county a different version than what they sent to the Littleton City Council. Now, since this has happened on the previous plans, it's a pretty good bet that this is going to happen on the plans that are before you, the Littleton Boulevard plan and the Broadway plan. The reality is that neither you nor I nor the citizens know really what the Littleton and the Broadway plans are going to end up looking like after you approve them and before they get to City Council until we actually see them at the City Council. Because we know that they've changed on the Santa Fe and Columbine Square. And in fact, it's a pretty good bet that they're going to change because the Lift Board approved both the Littleton plan and the Broadway plan before they were even written. Let me repeat that. The Lift Board is so committed to doing a good job and making sure that this stuff is done right that they couldn't even bother to read the plans before they approved them. And they couldn't read them because they passed them before they were written. Now, the fact that Lyft would give you a plan and then change the plan when they send it to the City Council is kind of an indication of how Lyft, what they think of you, but don't take that personally either because it's also an indication of what they think of the citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Paul Bingham is not in favor of either plan and wishes to speak.
Good evening, Planning Board. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle in Littleton. This is pretty short, what I've got to say to you good folks. Your question is, do these plans conform to the COM plan, the city's COM plan? Well, the city's COM plan includes neighborhood plans. You folks were working industriously to get those neighborhood plans brought up to date, and you were prevented from doing so. That hasn't happened. Therefore, you're working industriously here on do these two plans conform with the COM plan that's not finished? The main portion of the COM plan is finished, but the other part of the COM plan, several neighborhood plans are not finished. Therefore, the COM plan is not finished. Therefore, I would suggest to you, please table this whole thing until you've had an opportunity to finish the COM plan. Another reason for doing that, a totally different reason, is, well, before I get off of that subject, the two COM plans that are directly impacted here are the Kettering Park neighborhood, has Littleton Boulevard and Broadway right up there. Also, the Progress Park neighborhood is impacted by this. Anyway, new subject. New reason for you folks to table this whole thing is the letters from the county. Arapahoe County has sent 2 letters saying, no, we are not with you, city, on these urban renewal plans. And the city has put out a number 88 regulation's not the right word, but I can't think of it at the moment, that says we will not go forward, we city will not go forward this urban renewal plans unless all of the people that are involved, the school district, the county, the South Suburban, etc., until they all agree. Well, they obviously don't all agree. The county has said no in 2 places, 2 letters. I suggest, please, this is a second reason for you to table this whole thing until a bunch of this stuff gets straightened out. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne is against both plans and wishes to speak.
Thanks for sticking with us this evening, Planning Board. So, vision for the future of Littleton, 4 bullets I think are related to this issue. Respect and build upon its history. Promote a vibrant economy for individuals, businesses, and the city as a whole. Manage and direct change and strive for sustainability. Sustainability, something that will last in economic, environmental, and social decisions. And then keep Littleton distinctive, which is goal number 4. Maintain and expand upon the characteristics that make Littleton an authentic and distinctive community. And I'll say that the state demographer, when they spoke to the city council study session, talked about authenticity also. So build upon assets that are unique to Littleton and encourage preservation of historic structures, districts, and places that are significant to Littleton history. Encourage high-quality design and encourage architecture of place and small, independent businesses that differentiate Littleton from nearby municipalities. And architecture of place is vernacular architecture, the way in which ordinary buildings were built in a particular place. And then there's also so Colorado Preservation Inc. did declare our mid-century modern buildings, Littleton Boulevard, one of its 5 most endangered Colorado places for 2014. UR plan areas contain them or they're nearby, and there's no protection in the plans for these structures. Littleton made almost annual historic designations, but seemed to stop. Around 2009. I was working elsewhere here, and I don't know why, but I suggest to you that before these urban renewal plans, both of them in this Broadway and Littleton Boulevard area, are approved, this historic review and designation process has to resume. And these sites, these parcels, need the protection of this designation in order to be included in the urban renewal plan. Until then, they should not be. And until these designations are made, the Planning Board cannot find these plans compliant with the comprehensive plan. In fact, the UR plans endanger this vision by being contiguous explicitly for the purpose of encouraging parcel aggregation. And this was said over and over in the LIFT meetings when they made these areas. They refused to exclude property owners who wanted to be excluded because they needed contiguous areas so that proper parcels could be aggregated. I suggest to you these historic buildings are in danger until the city proceeds with studying them and doing historic designation. Also, to keep Littleton distinctive, mid-century modern is vanishing from the Denver metro area. It's an appealing design. Those are policies 4. Before the approval, we've got to encourage the preservation of these buildings and protect them. Until the design guideline, and in this surrounding area, until the design guidelines are done, I don't think Planning Board can say that these UR plans conform with the comprehensive plan in this policy, this goal, and the policies are with it. There should be traffic and transit requirements and affordable housing requirements. All of these apartments, for urban renewal, cities have to get something for it, and affordable housing should be one of them. And promoting a vibrant economy, the planning board should be concerned, just as Arapahoe County is, with the lack of fiscal feasibility. You can't approve this without some concept of why it's feasible that the plan will accomplish what it says it will.
Pam, please wrap up.
I will. One more thing, transformative action 2. Identify and designate, and it's funny, Ricker read these, use tools such as small area plans, zoning, capital improvements, and other incentives to set the stage. Planning board in the city must set the stage before these UR plans are recommended in order to comply. If areas are set before you set the stage, investors can aggregate properties in the areas without these constraints. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, we have, did I say Dan Flynn? Dan, okay. Dan, please state whether you're in favor or not of the...
I did not say.
You did not on here, no.
Right. Dan Flynn, 6089 South Broadway. Thank you. I wanted to, I mentioned that I'm not sure if I'm for or against these plans. I might be enthusiastic about urban renewal in general, the possibilities for it in Littleton, particularly for lots that are difficult in their layout, especially on Broadway. I think there is a potential for that. As a resident of the neighborhood, I don't have any major complaints about it. I want to say that. I think especially with the King Soopers returning, I think that was a terrific move on the part of the planning group to have that. I think the neighborhood was really rescued by that. And in general, the neighbors that I have on both sides of the Broadway are largely pleasant neighbors to have. So I don't have any large concerns about that. I think the area has great potential, and I think that this urban renewal might be an opportunity to partner with some of the property owners to get some changes that have been difficult in that area. My concern is that Figure 2 of the Broadway urban plan shows that there are properties in the neighborhood that are slated for future small plans. I'm referring to mostly the outdoor storage properties that are on the east side of Broadway. They're cross-hatched and they extend down past Orchard. They're slated for a small area plan. I was watching an earlier presentation by one of the experts, I don't remember her name, but one of the council members asked very directly what would be the order of precedence for these documents compared to the Urban Renewal Authority. And she said the answer was, without a doubt, that the comprehensive planning documents ought to exist first. The neighborhood plans, the small area plans, the corridor plans should be created first before the Urban Renewal Authority becomes involved. She was very clear on that. And so I wanted to talk to you about please encouraging them to work on that small area plan. I think that the Urban Renewal Authority chose parts of the Broadway corridor, and that's encouraging, but sort of arbitrarily stopped at Orchard, for instance. And I think that there are parts of the small area plan that were going to be discussed that are left out of that area. And I think that might get us in a difficult situation. There might be solutions that would be possible for the entire small area plan that wouldn't be considered if the Urban Renewal Authority only talks about properties north of Orchard. So I would encourage that. I do want to point out that the concern about the existing comprehensive plan apparently has language that for 30 years or so seems to back proposals that expand the outdoor storage car lots on the thing. Since I've lived on Broadway for about 8 years, I've seen that expanded several times. They've removed small businesses and put in more car dealerships. And in all the surveys, I haven't heard anything from the population saying that we want more car dealerships. If anything, there seems to be a push in the opposite direction, recognizing that those are not optimal use of the land. And so it would appear that the comprehensive plan is inadequate if the current language is encouraging, apparently, recommendations for more car dealerships, But if the populace wants fewer, then I think that it's important that we update that comprehensive plan to reflect that. And I think probably the small area plan that I mentioned would be a good chance to do that. I think that is all the notes that I had. One more thing. I did attend a thing a few years ago where the planning department hired or asked some students, master's students from the graduate students from DU to come up with some ideas, visions for the area of north of Littleton Boulevard, east of Broadway. And it was, non-committal. It was only an exercise, and it was helpful. But I would like to suggest that maybe that same thing could be done for this small area plan. Couldn't we bring in graduate students that might have a vision of what could be done on that? They wouldn't be limited by who would want to participate. They wouldn't be limited by urban renewal authorities. It's just a small area plan. It's the same has been done before. And I think there might be some good ideas that they could come out with that we could work from. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I do have one last name. Kathy Burns is not in support of the Broadway Urban Renewal Plan and does not wish to speak. Okay. Anybody else from the public that? Okay.
There were too many people around the desk. I couldn't get to it. I knew you would allow me to speak. Carol Brezek, I live in the 4th District. I'm weary of this whole process, and I try to step back and try to figure out what's happening. And I think the last LIFT meeting kind of put it all together for me. The LIFT board ended up approving a plan that hasn't been written. It's the strangest meeting to be in. They have nothing to look at. We have nothing to look at, but yet they approved the plan. And they approved the plan because it's going to be boilerplate, and they're not concerned. But at some point in the meeting, one of the members says something about, is sales tax going to be included in the increment? Somebody says, well, no. Well, how do you know? You don't have a written plan to even go and refer to find out what's in it. I've been here before. I'm not going to belabor it, but the plan you have before you is not a plan. The urban renewal law says an urban renewal plan means a plan that exists from time to time for an urban renewal project. And you don't have a project, and as has been stated, Arapahoe County agrees. The law also states, the conditions of blight. So you can go out and find blight, and we've been told by the chair of LIFT that he can blight any piece of property in the state of Colorado. But the law goes on to talk about the blighted area. I'll never be able to read it from here, but it's the law. But it's the blight has to substantially impair or arrest the sound growth of the municipality, retard the provision of housing accommodations, or constitutes an economic or social liability and a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare. And I want this board to tell me where you're concerned about the public health and safety and the morals and the welfare. Where in these two areas are we really concerned about the spread of disease that's going to harm this community? You have an opportunity tonight for a redo. The plans are boilerplate. We know the Board of County Commissioners are going to be writing letters that look very similar to the ones that we have in our possession already. And I think it's unfair that you have to make a decision without having the benefit of a real discussion about the ins and outs of all of this that so many of us have sat through at the LIFT board, and frankly, there's not much more being said there than there is here. And I don't believe the survey that they keep touting as the basis for all of this is really what the citizens of Littleton wanted. If you go and look at the survey questions, there's nothing in there about urban renewal. It talks about underperforming shopping centers and do we want to invest in private public partnerships, but nobody asks how that happens. Nobody talks about how much money is it going to cost the other taxing entities or how it's done. And I think it's time to stop and have a community-wide discussion. The reason they voted on a plan or two plans that weren't written is they were told they were running out of time. Who's running out of time? We've got all the time in the world to do this and try to do it right. I've brought letters. I don't know if you have the copy of the letters from the Arapahoe County on the two previous urban renewal plans, but I have a copy for each of you. I think it's something that's worth your time reading. You'll be seeing another one.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Okay. I don't have anybody else signed up here. Anyone I've missed? Okay. And do you want to address some of the comments made here?
Okay, let's see. The gentleman that came tonight, I don't know what, I mean, those were really good ideas if he saw something that is inconsistent in terms of the car dealerships. That really has nothing to do with urban renewal. And I'm guessing who he was talking about was Tracy Huggins with Denver Urban Renewal, when he said he saw a woman who said you should really get the small area plans done first. I've heard a number of references to that. Tracy and I know each other very well. It's kind of up to you guys if you have the resources to do that and priorities and timing. And, I know there were market pressures in that, so urban renewal kind of jumped up. But again, I can't speak to any of that. Let's see. Plan shows creation of new apartment units. Actually, the plan shows no creation of new apartment units. I think what they're referring to is the impact report that was prepared. And as we've said on numerous occasions, kind of like you can't have it both ways. On one hand, there's a complaint that the plan's not specific enough. And then on the other hand, there's a complaint that what's in the impact report is like a done deal. And when we do the impact report, when there are no known projects, we have to, based on, what the market might bring, based on available sites, has nothing to do with whether they could be approved through zoning, if there's zoning changes or planning board, you all would approve those projects. But we have to make an estimate of what's possible. But as we've said all along, the only thing that will happen in the area is what the private sector brings to you for consideration and you approve. I mean, if we sent the county, it's just how the statute's set up. If we sent the county impact report without something, that would violate the law too. And I have prepared the exact same formatted impact report for Arapahoe County, for other cities, for the last 15 years. They know exactly what our reports look like. This was not a surprise to them. They've never complained before. There's a lot more to this, and it goes straight up to the state legislature, and anybody who listened to the city council meeting understands that what they're saying, what they said in their letter, is exactly what they as an organization brought before the legislation last year, and they're just prepping to do that again. So God's truth, you can get all the records and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So not to say they don't have complaints, I'm just saying that format, that analysis is nothing they haven't seen before and they've seen for 15 years. Conversion of commercial units to apartments, again, as we've said, the urban renewal plan is not a regulating document. It is not doing that. It's not converting anything. There's no illustration in the urban renewal plan that shows a rezoning or a conversion. They have to be referring to the impact report. Let's see. Subsidize, all of that whole conversation. Let's see, blighted, I'm looking again. Oh, blighted and slummed again. That's come up on a number of occasions with regard to the first project. Riverfront. in real estate development, there's a term that they use related especially to commercial retail that says retail changes its face every 7 years. Grab a retail developer and he'll say that. Any of you of any reasonable age will know that, you've tracked the changing face of retail at least 5 times in each of your lives. So, there was the old historic downtown with the shop and, maybe you had JCPenney and all that, and then it went out to the burbs, and then you had your regional malls, and then you had your out parcels and your junior anchors and your lifestyle centers, and, you've seen it all, right? So it is not uncommon at all. I can think of 3, 4, 5 instances where regional malls or large commercial centers in Colorado used urban renewal 25 years ago. 25 years was up, and the face of that retail changed. The market changed. What we want changed. The industry changed. Everything. And does that mean it's blighted? Yeah, there were conditions that reoccurred after 25 years. My heavens, nothing stays the same. But in 25 years, things do wear out and things do change. So, the fact that something comes up for consideration again after 30 years, that's not unique in this state or any state. In terms of the public improvement items that I listed in the PowerPoint that are not listed in the plan, I have no way to answer that because, as I said, items that will be considered by LIFT for improvement within each of these areas will first have to be identified as a priority item and in consultation with public input. Again, I go back to, first the plan's not specific enough, and then it's too specific. And those intentions are a list of public items that are eligible expenses under the urban renewal law. Until there's a project, how could anybody possibly know what improvements need to be made other than we know what has been identified in the condition survey? And even then, until you have the resources, how do you identify what you're going to fix? In terms of the 612 version and specifically related to sales tax, this came up at the public hearing and I couldn't figure out what they were talking about. And I know what it is now. When we cleaned up the plans, minor typographical errors and things like that, I was told to go back and make sure everything was consistent with all the meeting minutes and everything. And on that one item, in fact, the reference was at the last meeting that made me think about it was, if you go back to all the earlier LIFT meetings, not that this has anything to do with whether the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but just for the record, it was a stated intention of the LIFT board very early on when we talked about the major elements of the plan that it be property tax and sales tax on an as-requested basis to City Council. In an earlier version, a draft of the plan, it was in there that way. When it went through some updates and we were getting comments, that section got left out. It didn't get transferred over to the newest version. So we went back, went through the notes, went through the intentions of the board and their motions and all that. And I was told, make sure you get that in there as it was intended. So I don't even know the date that happened, but if it happened after your meeting, I apologize. But that is not a substantial change. And again, it is absolutely consistent with what the LIFT board wanted. It was literally a typographical error in the versions of the report or of the plan that were coming forward based on the comments coming in. So, I apologize that that paragraph was different. Let's see, the intent to amend the language to, that was that. Property owner, historic designation. Best of my ability, you all can't just go out and designate a property. That's a property owner's job to get a property designated. So I'd be real careful of that because as much as I love historic buildings too, which is part of why I like urban renewal, because it's a great way to allow property owners to improve their property and have a financial resource to do that. Going out and imposing that designation, as much as we all may love it, comes with a gigantic financial price tag, and I would just caution you and make sure those actual property owners want you to do that. That's probably the bulk of it. Yeah, I don't know anything about running out of time, so we had to hurry. That's just not in my memory, but I don't know.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
enough?
Hold on, Ann. I want to let the board ask any questions. Any questions from the board? Any questions?
I have one. I regret I wasn't at the LIFT meeting that happened. I was out of town. So I do feel like, is there a rush? Are we under a time constraint for the LIFT, for all this to be approved? Does it run out?
No. The only time frame that'll actually happen is, this has all been scheduled. The processes like these do cost money. So the more meetings, the more money. That's okay, just so you know that. And when the city council opens the public hearing if that's scheduled and they go ahead and they open it, then they are required to act within 120 days to make a decision one way or the other. If they don't, then you cannot revisit an urban renewal plan designation in that area for 2 years.
Weren't we told at the last meeting that we basically were forced to make a decision on that day? We were not being granted additional time to talk because there was a city council meeting that was already scheduled, and whether we made a decision or not was irrelevant. That was going to go forward to them, so we were pressured to make that decision?
I certainly wouldn't. I don't remember verbatim everything. How I can hypothetically answer is, and I honestly don't remember, if the public hearing was scheduled and those notices went out and it was in the paper, that's what you would have heard, is that, well, this has already been scheduled, so you need to weigh in before that. Otherwise, you have to renotice and redo the newspaper, and then people, of course, get upset about that as well. That's what I'm guessing you heard, and why there was a time frame was that public hearing had been set. As far as the public hearing for these plans, has that been set? It has, and the notices have gone out?
Yeah, I can address both those, Board Member Graham. The statute provides that you have 30 days to consider this plan and provide recommendations to City Council, or they can move forward. The hearing on these plans, notice has gone out, and it is scheduled before City Council on December 2nd.
There you go.
So you're saying that City Council can move forward, but they can elect not to as well?
There will be it will be before City Council on December 2nd, these two plans. And if you do not provide a recommendation within 30 days of receipt, then council will move forward without a recommendation from you.
Okay. The first thing you said was they might move forward. So they will move forward without a recommendation.
Right. It will be on the agenda for December 2nd because that's the notice we've provided to.
But they have the option to say, you know what, we want to hear what the planning board. I'm not saying that they necessarily would, but.
Sorry,
they have the
I
option.
At that hearing?
Maybe this is a moot point, but they would have the option to say, you know what, we want to hear what the planning board has to say. We're going to table this until the next meeting.
Yes.
That's just their right to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that, the 120 days goes into effect on the date of the City Council public hearing.
The 120 days will start on December 2nd.
Okay, if they continue with them. Okay, thank you. I have two very quick questions. It's more clarification. So the historic preservation, so the whole discussion on historic preservation, one of the values of TIF is the incremental funding can be used for public benefit. So would historic, to help support historic preservation, would that be designated as a public benefit? Okay.
Yeah, that list from Duro's website, honestly, the vast majority of those buildings that were redeveloped in the last real estate cycle, the last 15 years, the vast majority were historic. I mean, I know those developers, and in order to keep those buildings compliant with that designation, it was very costly, and they heavily relied on urban renewal TIF dollars to do that.
Okay. Then the second one, again, clarification, because I keep hearing it in different ways. So the tax increment financing, is the increment limited to property taxes only, or does it also include sales tax? You also talked about on exception basis or as requested. So I really want to understand.
Sure. So as the plans are written and as has been the intent of the LIFT board all along was that in the law, you have to do all or nothing on property tax. Okay, you can't do 50% of the cities and blah, blah, blah. You have to do all or nothing on property, okay? Now, that's not to say that you can't, as your authority board already has done, struck an agreement with the school district where they said, you know, we have to legally collect it all, okay, on property tax, but we can give you back some portion. There's no restrictions on revenue sharing back with the other districts or any entity like that. So on property, all or nothing, but on sales, you have the option to collect city sales tax. You never can collect county sales tax, incremental or otherwise. That's a pass-through. But you can collect some or all or none of the sales tax increment, okay? And as has been the intent of LIFT, and we tried to make it very, very clear in the writing of the plan, what will happen, let's say the plans get adopted, and again, these plans don't even have a TIF provision, right? I mean, they're not necessarily, as far as I know, starting the TIF clock, but when the TIF clock starts, they're saying we're only going to capture the property tax increment. The sales tax increment, which is the cities only, will flow to the city as it does in any other area of the city. But as projects might come forward in the urban renewal areas, if their gap, they can prove their gap is bigger than what the property tax increment is that they generate, and they request that assistance, if it exceeds that, because let's say the city wants them to do additional open space and complete some streets and do a gateway treatment or whatever it is, then the LIFT board, they've imposed on themselves in these plans the requirement that they have to prepare a financing plan to justify an additional funding request to council for that project. So they have to go to city council and say, this is how much property tax they're going to generate in increment. The gap is this. We have a gap of this because all we collect is property tax. Would you be willing to also rebate them some portion of the sales tax they might generate? But that's completely up to council. That is exactly what you guys do today. The King Soopers, the gas station in front of the King Soopers, the brewery, they are getting a sales tax rebate, okay? That is exactly, that provision just says on an as-needed basis, we might come to you, but we'll have to prove the gap, and you'll get to decide. And if they say no, they say no.
When you use the word project, so another terminology that was used was tax increment area. Are these one and the same thing?
No,
or are they two separate?
You. I'm glad you said that. So I always encourage people not to, it's tricky and people use the terms inaccurately, so forgive my hands, but the municipal boundaries of Littleton, that is the jurisdiction of the LIFT authority. All that means is that somewhere within the municipal boundaries, areas can be surveyed to see if they are a potential candidate for urban renewal, but it must be within the municipal boundaries. They can't go into the county, okay? It's a municipal tool. So there's that geography. And then within the municipality, they can go in and create urban renewal plan areas if they qualify. So that's your second geography. And then your third geography is within each plan, you can create one or more tax increment financing districts, can be coterminous with the plan boundaries, or they can be small, separate ones. And then the next level of geography is the project. Now, you might have a boundary. So think about South Santa Fe, where, it was proposed that there's that tax increment financing district that just picks up the RTD property just north of Mineral, and then it just goes to the southern boundary. Well, you've got, 5 or 6 property owners down there or something. They could each come forward with a project on their property. They're still in the same TIF district, but each project is a standalone. So you might have 6 projects within that TIF district. Does that make sense? So those are those important geographies that you kind of have to keep stepping down.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so if no further questions, we'll close the public hearing for both the urban renewal, the North Broadway urban renewal plan, as well as the Littleton Boulevard urban renewal plan. We will reconvene I would recommend at our next scheduled meeting for us to deliberate as a board and make a decision on these urban renewal areas. And I think our next scheduled meeting would be
It's the
hopefully
24th.
not Thanksgiving.
Can I actually get a formal motion to continue these 2 matters to the 24th for final decision?
Motion to table this till the 24th. Table the discussion of the lift property work till the 24th.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.